And we are
Oh
live.
god.
How is everybody?
Hello.
We'll just wait for some people to trickle in because I don't believe we have even a single view yet.
I mean, like, have you posted this on Twitter yet? Just out
Oh
of
shit!
interest.
I didn't announce it. Shit! Fuck.
Well, that might be why.
I'm really running on reverse here because we already did announce this days ago and then we didn't end up getting to fucking do it. All right, let's see.
Oh,
I'll tweet it out now. Let me find the thumbnail.
no worries.
In my camera roll. I really do just
put it on your.
don't I? Here we go.
Also, chuck it on your Discord server as well.
Do what now?
Chuck the announcement on your Discord server as well.
Okay. We
just to ensure that everyone knows.
Live now. Let's grab the link off of the YouTube. Ooh, I already got a super chat from Sam Montgomery.
Oh wow, damn.
What's on the menu, lads?
Hey, Sam.
Well, the menu is on the menu.
Deliciousness.
We are going to break down a cinematic masterpiece. And I said that sounding like sarcastic. I didn't mean it sarcastically. It's actually just good.
Oh no, this film is just absolutely phenomenal. And after like hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of us talking about absolute crap in The Mandalorian and Attack of the Clones and Force Awakens, I'm so happy to be talking about a film I'm genuinely enthused about.
Well, so that's kind of the reason we're here today to do this, because we continually talk about really bad storytelling. Like, I mean, we've done like 4 streams on The Mandalorian season 3 alone, which tends to get to a man.
Yeah.
When all you ever do is just talk about fucking bad movies and bad shows. We wanted to sort of break the mold, I guess, just have a bit of reprieve and talk about something just genuinely great. Some high art, one might say. And I mean, this movie is kind of perfect for that because it's brilliant. It is thematically rich. It has so much to like pull from it, like narratively. There's so much to break down that like we could be going for 12 hours and we probably wouldn't even scratch the surface, but we're not going to go for that long. So we're going to try to do this as quickly as we possibly can, but there is also a lot to get into. So unless there's anything you want to say, like introductory wise, I think we should just dive in.
No, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's do it.
All right. Well, so the way we wanted to do this, we typically go like chronologically. And we go through the thing from start to finish, and we sort of pause whenever we get to something stupid to talk about, and then we talk about that. But the way that this film is structured kind of doesn't allow for that. And also like the more important things to break down with it are like what themes it's telling us, what each character represents, what the overall message is, and like how it's conveyed. And so what we thought we'd do instead is just kind of go over it in a sort of looser fashion and just sort of I guess just pick it apart with all the context. So what I want to do is give like basically a very brief yet thorough synopsis of the film. And then once all the context is out there and we could like you guys have a better understanding of what this movie is and what it does, then we can start going over, I guess, like the characters, what they represent, what the overall message is, and what the point is, and like. So, with that said, this is a movie. It's basically an eat the rich movie, but like not overly pretentious and like shooting itself in the foot like most of them tend to be. Basically, these rich assholes all get ferried onto an island to eat at this extremely fancy and prestigious restaurant called, what was it? Sorry, the Hawthorne.
Hawthorne. It's called the Hawthorne.
Which is run by this master chef named Slowick. Played by Ray Fiennes. He's the best character in the movie. I'm just going to get that out of the way. He is excellent.
Oh yeah, he's phenomenal.
And basically what he's done is he's prepared this whole feast for these people, several courses that all have like an underlying theme. He's basically like the idea is that like people come here for the experience more than the actual food, because they'll typically like tell a story and have like an underlying concept and a point. And most of them, most of the people who come here just come to like say they've been here. Basically, it's sort of a rite of passage. If you're rich, it's like, hey, I went to Hawthorne. Yeah, I ate there. You get bragging rights essentially, and that's why most people are here. But Slowick has a different point to make. And throughout the evening, you basically get this underlying sense of dread as it's more and more unraveled until shit basically just hits the fan, and they realize they're all gonna die. He and all of the chefs that work for him, who are completely and utterly devoted to him, have devised a plan to basically teach these people a lesson, and then all of them will die, including themselves. The whole idea is it'll go up in flames at the end, and it'll be a glorious spectacle that has a meaning and has a purpose.
Yeah,
so
it's
Jolly,
essentially like the world's most artistically elaborate murder-suicide.
Which I mean, if there is a way to go out, it's going to be that, I would say. If I'm gonna die, it's gonna be with a purpose and with a point to make. So
yeah.
With all that being said, Jolly, do you want to sort of run through this? You're typically better at breaking these down.
Sure. I'll just give like the kind of very, very brief Cliff Notes version, right? So basically, we start the film off with our two apparent main characters, which is a guy called Tyler, played by Nicholas Hoult.
Mm-hmm. Great actor, yeah.
And a girl called Margot, played by Anya Taylor-Joy. Yeah, they're both phenomenal, absolutely fantastic actors. I mean, the whole film was packed with just incredible actors and incredible acting.
Well, yeah, but I would say they're there. I've seen a lot of things
along with like this very.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I think we have no. I think we might have the slide today, by the way. Again.
No, I know.
Yeah. So that no worries. They go onto this island with this sort of very rich and elite group of people who've been carefully selected by Slowick. They've all been invited. They didn't like buy tickets or something. And they come from sort of various different elite fields, but they all in some way represent the elite. And they're thrown onto this island where Slowick breaks them down over the course of this like menu that he and his chefs have constructed. And this menu has been explicitly designed to essentially teach them through artistic means exactly how unsatisfied, or dissatisfied I should say rather, he is with the culture they've built up around high art and how he thinks they've ruined art and ruined his life as a result of having to live up to their ridiculously stupid standards. And Margot, Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who's only here as like a last-minute invite by Tyler and who's not one of the kind of rich elites, is sort of accidentally stuck in the situation where like she's going to get killed along with everybody else. And so she's like trying to get out of this. And as the evening goes on, things get like darker and darker and darker until eventually Slowick's plan is for them all to be killed in one last sort of artistic act, and then they all go out together. And she's trying to find a way to avoid that. And that's basically the film.
Mm-hmm. And so the reason she's here, just to sort of develop that just to add context, Tyler is a character who is basically just utterly devoted to I don't want to say he's devoted to the craft because he's really not. That's kind of the point. But like he's obsessed with Slowick and with cooking and with just sort of being the know-it-all who knows all these different terminologies. Which I mean, it goes over my head personally because unlike Jolly here, I'm not exactly a foodie. But that's like his entire character. He wants to be in this, like at this restaurant. He wants to go here and meet his idol, basically. But they only seat for two. And he had a date originally, someone named Miss Westervelt. We never meet her, but they had a falling out. So he essentially hired her to be his date for this, knowing full well going in what Slowick was planning, basically bringing her to her death. So Slowick didn't account for her being there. He wasn't expecting her there. She sort of is the exception to the rule almost that he to the point that he's trying to make. And so that's the role she serves narratively as well as like literally she is the wild card. She is not supposed to be here, and she does not fit into the point of the message, essentially. But yeah, so that's
no,
what the
she's
film is about. Oh God.
Don't worry, we'll battle through it. Yeah, so basically that's just to carry on from what you were saying. Like that's what the film's about. I think the way we're going to do this now, like we've got the synopsis out of the way, is we're just going to go dive into the themes and like what each character represents. So I think the best way to start this is Sheev, if you give us like an overview of what you think like the overarching theme is, and then like if you break down, or actually, then I'll give what I think it is, and then we can break down what we think the characters kind of represent within those themes.
Okay, so the overarching theme, as I understand it, is Slowick is unhappy with the way people in this elite class engage with his art, with his work. He does this, or at least he did this because it was something he was passionate about, and he spent decades building like this reputation as an esteemed and renowned chef who works in this prestigious restaurant, and he's no longer happy with it because he's recognized that people don't actually give a shit. It's like I was kind of giving at earlier. These people come here basically just to say they've been here, not actually to experience what he's like, his work and what he's trying to do and what he's trying to say. Like they brag more about like, they take pictures of their food. Like Tyler takes pictures of his food, which is something that annoys the fuck out of Slowick. There's this couple that comes here who have been here like 11 times in the past 5 years, and couldn't tell you a single dish that they've eaten like in any of the times that they've come. He's just unhappy with the way people are engaging with his art, and he considers it the death of his art, and he considers himself partially responsible for essentially cultivating this atmosphere of disinterested elitist assholes, and he wants to teach them a lesson. And like Jolly was saying, basically each character that's seated at this restaurant represents a different facet of the death of his art as he sees it. And so that's why he's meticulously planned out this evening to invite these specific people and bring them all together. There's a character who is like a food critic. She's sort of the overly pedantic, I guess Anton Ego character, except she goes out of her way to find little nitpicks to point out throughout the movie. And she uses overly flowery language to make herself sound smarter. And in reality, like you kind of get the sense that like she is more. I say you get the sense this is basically like said in the film. She's driven more by ego than actually like honesty and integrity and trying to like engage in good faith with what she's reviewing. Which is obviously meant to represent, like if you were to one-to-one compare this to like film criticism, which is what my mind immediately goes to because that's sort of my area of expertise. It comes off as the people who make pretentious video essays where they don't actually know what they're talking about, but they use big words, and they I'm instantly going to like high top films, but like it's unfair to just say high top films. But, they use big words, and they use like really, really nice camera angles, and they make their productions look really nice and good. But like, there's no substance to what they're actually saying, and yet a lot of people ferry behind them anyway. And he's unhappy with her. He's unhappy with the way she like has put several people out of jobs with like unfair reviews, and that's basically like her comeuppance is that. She nitpicks the shit out of like every dish, including what she's currently being served, to the point where he starts basically making fun of her for it. Like there was one course where they were being served like a breadless bread plate with various emulsion like dressed on the plate, and she picked out at one of them and said the emulsion is broken. which is, pretty unprofessional for an establishment like this. You wouldn't expect to see that here. So what he does is just continues to have like bigger bowls of broken emulsion like put in front of her. And it just like comedically gets like bigger bowls throughout the film just to fuck with her. But yeah, that's essentially what the overarching theme is like people not engaging properly with his art, and it's frustrating him to the point where he no longer enjoys doing what he does, and so he's just going to basically go out with a bang and kill all the people who represent the death of his art.
Yeah, I think there's a just to follow on from what you were saying, I think that's the kind of main theme the film's getting at, right? Of like take Slowick out of the equation and just look at it as like, what's the filmmaker's intent, right? Of this film being a general gripe about how the general population of planet Earth seems to engage with art now, or at least very specifically how the industry seems to engage with art now, and how people in the industry seem to engage with art now. And so you have this overarching theme, which you nailed on the head, right? Which is like, you can kind of summarize it like art dies when genuine engagement dies, when passion dies. When it just becomes a performative, it becomes hollow and meaningless. That's kind of your main theme. And then within that theme, supporting that theme, these kind of secondary themes, you have the big one, which is the kind of elitism angle, which is like lays the blame for that culture very directly at the feet of like a kind of rich elite or a wannabe rich elite. And they're like, you guys are the problem. The commodification of art and the different ways in which that happens is the problem. Like you fucked it. You fucked everything. And then underneath that, there's a kind of third theme, which is like much less prevalent than the other two in the movie, but it is there. And I think it is worth discussing later when we get to it, which is the kind of like the attack on this myth of the auteur. This kind of this idea that like art is the result of one kind of omnipotent dictator artist's creative vision, where he just like controls all his little team like little robots and they execute his vision perfectly. The idea that that's what art is, or that's how that's how art is generated. That myth kind of gets tackled on the head, as well as the kind of underlying misogyny that sort of goes into that. So you have characters like Catherine, who is one of Slowick's under chefs, one of his sous chefs, who is a female chef that he sexually harassed before the film started, and then she rejected him, and then he horribly mistreated her in the kitchen for like 8 months, and she helped him devise the menu to kill everyone. And so there's a funny scene in the movie, which we can talk about more in detail when we talk about the actual courses, where there's a course that's just for the female guests, and all the men get told to go run away over the island and get caught in basically a giant game of cops and robbers. And the female guests are talking to Catherine, and they think that they can like talk her out of this. They think they can like that she's been manipulated, and they can like appeal to her better nature to let them escape. And so they're like, oh, we don't have to die. Like we could all just go. Like you could come with us. And Catherine's like, no, all of you dying is my idea. I came up with that. And they're like, oh, fuck.
I really like that scene.
Actually, there's a wonderful little character moment, which, yeah, that seems amazing. That scene is so fucking funny. But there's a really nice little moment as well in that scene. Actually, there's two nice little moments, which one of them is feeds into this kind of auteur myth, because like the other big kind of like anti-auteur element of this movie is Margot, because Margot is a kind of stand-in for like how an artist, how an audience should engage with art. She's the kind of stand-in for the everyman. The genuine person who's genuinely going into art with an open mind and isn't consumed by the culture around it and doesn't see through the lens of that culture. And she's this is something the film makes clear later. She's a sex worker. Her real name isn't Margot. Her real name is Erin. And this is the scene where you find that out, where like Catherine's like, you're all going to die. And they're all like, oh, fuck. And then Margot's like, just in case anyone's interested, that's my actual name is Erin. Just FYI.
I know none of you give a shit, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and it's such a lovely little moment. You also kind of get it with Anne as well. So Anne is the wife in the rich couple, and throughout the film there are kind of like hints that like while she shares her husband's like apathy towards art, which is what they're being punished for, that she's actually kind of a nice person, right? Like she does seem to genuinely care about her husband's well-being. And at the end, when Margot escapes with Slowick's blessing, she looks back at everyone who's still trapped there, who's going to die, and she looks to Anne specifically. And Anne, even though it's revealed in the movie that her husband engaged Margot as a sex worker at some point, Anne still gives her like a little nod, like, yeah, go, you earned this, go, get out while you can. There's a kind of moment of solidarity between them, which I really like as a little note to their characters. So yeah, those are all kind of like themes. You got like the art is, bad engagement is the death of art theme, and then you got the kind of secondary theme of here's the culture that's responsible. And then the kind of like third little sub note to that second theme of like, and here is a specific bit that we're extra unhappy with. Yeah, and I guess now's the time to talk about the characters, right, and what they mean within those themes, which again you kind of touched on. But I don't know if you want to leap in ahead of me or whether you're happy for me to start it.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
All right, so let's break it down. Let's break it down, everybody. By table. That's how I've done my notes. Is who is on what table. So table 1, we have Tyler and Margot. Now, Tyler is very much supposed to be kind of representative of like toxic fanboy culture, and that he is like super obsessed with the art. Well, he's not even really obsessed with the artist. He's obsessed with like the culture of respect and prestige that goes around the artist. Like he desperately, he's very much a character who's on the outside of a world he wants to be in, looking in through the window, and has become extremely cultish in his like devotion to that world, to the point where like he doesn't really have a personality or identity of his own. It's completely subsumed by his desire to be a part of that world that he only kind of shallowly understands, because there's no depth to him. So how could he possibly understand the depths of that world? Margot, on the other hand, polar opposite. She's, like I said before, she's the representative of the genuine audience who's going in clear-eyed, who's just engaging with art on its own terms. Now you get table 2, which is Lillian and Ted. Lillian is the overly pretentious art critic, and Ted is her sycophantic, cowardly editor,
yes, man,
who just regurgitates everything she says like it's the gospel truth.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I thought you were jumping on something about Ted.
Oh no, it's just Ted. He's her fucking hype man. He agrees with everything even if he disagrees with what she says, she's just like, no, you're wrong, fuck you. And he's like, yeah, no, I was wrong. He's so weak.
Yeah, exactly. He's like the ultimate, just the ultimate yes man, and an embarrassment. There's a very funny scene as well. So again, during this course where all the men get told to run away, and they get to make a break for it, a break that they got no realistic chance of ever getting away in. Ted survives the longest without being caught, purely because he went and hid. He went and hid himself in the chicken coop on the island. And there's this little, I mean, it's a very on the nose, but it's a very funny little visual metaphor where like he's the last person to be found hiding amongst the hens, and they hand him like a special little dessert, which is basically just a glorified chicken egg. So like the "you're a chicken" metaphor couldn't really be more heavy if you try, but it's done in such a kind of funny way that you kind of just like sitting there and like, yeah. Actually, while I'm on the subject of Lillian as well, so at the start of the movie, before we even sort of really meet Lillian, Margot pulls out a cigarette when they're waiting on the dock for this boat to take them to the island. Margot pulls out a cigarette. She's about to light up, and Tyler's like, no, like starts it out of her mouth, like, no, you don't smoke because smoking ruins the palate, and you won't be able to taste the food properly or appreciate it properly. Now he's just being a dick. Like, he's just being a pretentious dick because he doesn't really understand the words he's saying properly. But Lillian, who's supposed to be like the extreme critic, the one who's like word can like make or break restaurants, who's destroyed careers overnight. In the scene where they're all like, oh fuck, I guess we're gonna die then, she pulls out a cigarette and lights up, which is just a clever little moment where the movie's like, yeah, she's kind of full of shit as well, and that like she's not going into this art engagement with a clear eye. She's not going in honestly. She's not criticizing art for the sake of the art. She's criticizing it performatively to maintain this aura of prestige and power and authority that she's wielding. And so, like, the fact that she can't even really taste the food that she's dismissing out of hand, that she hasn't even bothered to give a fair shape to the artist that she's tearing down, is a little so yeah, nice little visual moment to just like confirm that, which is, mwah, I love this. I love filmmaking like that. Right, and then we're on to table 3. Which is Richard and Anne, the entitled rich couple. Now, I'll treat them as a couple first before I talk about Richard, because I think Anne is kind of just like the most innocent of the pair here and doesn't deserve to be lumped in with Richard's crimes. But as a couple, they represent how the wealthy generally engage with art, which is to say, like, yeah, which you kind of mentioned earlier, of to them, art isn't an experience. It isn't something that you look for meaning in. Art is just another way of passing your time when you're wealthy. Like, it's such an apathetic engagement. They go to this restaurant because that's just what you do when you're rich. You go to fancy restaurants. And so you have this little scene later, for example, where all, you know, when the invitees all have worked out that Sloak is not taking the piss, they are all actually going to die, and they're all defending themselves like, why do we deserve to die? Anne is like, well, what did we do? And we've been here loads. We love patronizing your work. And Slowik's like, all right, name one thing you've eaten in the last like 11 times you've been here. Like, you've been here 11 times. Each time costs like $1,500 or $1,200 or something. Like, this is the kind of thing where like most people could only dream of doing this once in their lifetime. Like, it's an experience for them. You've been here 11 times because you can do that.
He said, "Name one dish
Sorry,
that you had the last time you were here, or the time before that." And like whispers into Richard's ear. She's like, "Cod." He's cod. He's like, "It wasn't cod, you donkey. It was halibut." What does it matter? It matters.
But like the line. Yeah, it's that line of like when he's like, what does it matter? What does it matter? And he's like, whether it was cod or halibut. He's like, well, it matters to the artist, and it matters to the halibut. This is I can't remember her saying. It's like, it matters to the halibut, and it matters to the artist whose art is turning to shit in your guts.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, what a fucking great line that is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Ray Fiennes' character is just riddled with great lines. There are so many that I have jotted down. Like, basically all of my notes were just like jotting down his speeches while he was like presenting the different courses, because my God.
Yeah, he's got some absolutely phenomenal lines. I keep using the word phenomenal. I need to find a different descriptor.
Exquisite.
Yeah, exquisite. We'll go with that.
But you were talking about Richard and Anne.
Yeah. So with Richard, we have like Richard's one is a slightly more egregious crime, right? Of like he has that entitlement that Anne does, of the rich people just kind of going through the motions of engaging with art and kind of dismissing it and reducing it to something banal and ordinary and unremarkable. But he also has this second attribute, which is like at the beginning of the movie, Margot notices Richard on the dock, and she looks quite uncomfortable to see him there. And then he sees her, and he also looks quite uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And we don't get a payoff for this until about halfway through the movie, and all the way up until that point, they're kind of just like occasionally they'll be glancing over at each other and looking uncomfortable. And Anne, I think, even calls Richard out on it, right? Where he's like, "Oh, that girl keeps looking over here. Do we know her? Like, she looks really familiar. Don't you think she looks like our daughter?" And Richard's like, "No, I don't. I don't think she looks like that. Why would you even bring that up?" And it's like such an overreaction. And then Margot gets brought into like Slowik's private rooms when he's trying to like work out what to do with her because she's not supposed to be there. And when he like calls her out as being like, "Oh, I recognize a member of the serving class. Like, I recognize a worker when I see one," and calls her out as being an escort girl. And he's like, "Oh, did you enjoy what you did?" in reference to her work. And she's like, "Oh, I used to, but now I get clients who are just like, who just make a mockery of the whole thing, and it's awful to be with them." And she explicitly is like, "Oh, I was with this guy once, and he wanted me to role play as his dead daughter while I jacked him off." Mm-hmm. And you're like, "Oh, that's Richard. Oh, that's really uncomfortable."
Yeah.
And we don't really get much on the daughter or the backstory for that, but there are like kind of hints here and there that like the daughter may have committed suicide, and you kind of have to like, because the film is drawing this connection for us, right? You kind of have to draw that back to Richard's sexual perversions and be like, I wonder what he did to her. I wonder in what way he abused and took advantage of somebody else, not just Slowik or the art. Like this culture of just taking what you think is your owed because you can, because you have the power.
Yeah.
Really grimy stuff. It again feeds back in thematically, and that's a through line that Slowik himself kind of realizes that, like at the start of the taco course, Slowik tells this little story about how when he was growing up in Iowa, his father was like this raging alcoholic, and his mother, who was also an alcoholic, never really did anything to defend him or herself. And so he recalls this time where like his dad was beating on his mum, and to make him stop, child Slowik took a pair of sewing scissors and stabbed them into the thigh of his father. And like this becomes representative of like misogyny throughout the movie. Like it happens in the course where they serve the chicken with the chicken thigh stabbed with the scissors as a garnish. But later on, when we have Slowik admitting to sexually harassing Catherine, she gets to stab him in the thigh with some needles in front of all the other men as his atonement. And it's strongly hinted that this is one of the moments where he realized that the culture that he was serving with his art had warped him and twisted him into becoming like a reflection of itself, as like how does he describe it? Like a taker rather than a giver. Someone who exists to just steal the work of others and diminish the work of others and treat it as disposable. and treat other people as disposable. And that's what he's really railing against. Yeah, so thematically, it carries through this Richard and daughter plotline, and also it carries through with Tyler, because again, it's revealed that Tyler hired Margot fully in the knowledge that she was going to die as a result of being brought along to this.
He wanted so badly to be part of this world, despite the fact that like that would mean bringing her to her death, as well as I still like this. Did he just know that he was also going to die and he just didn't care? Because I mean, clearly,
I think that's the implication. Yeah.
Clearly, he values this obsession over his own life, given the way he does go out, which I can't wait to talk about because it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Oh my god, that scene is so funny. Like it's really dark, but damn is it funny. And like there's speaking as like someone who criticizes art and like has to watch like a lot of really shitty art critics who are kind of the toxic fandom that are embodied in Tyler. Watching Tyler get his comeuppance was so fucking cathartic. Like you've no idea.
You represent the death of my art.
Yeah, exactly. Like whenever I see these extremely bad critics doing the rounds, I don't even want to call them critics, right? Because they're not. They're just entitled fanboys, entitled audiences who don't really care about the art so much as they care about the kind of culture of it, and treat it as though it's their own personal possession.
Anyway.
Yeah, like
so we went over Tyler, Margot, and then fucking Bloom and Ted, her yes man, and then we went over Richard and Anne. Was there anything more you wanted to say about Richard and Anne?
No, we're kind of done with Richard and Anne. I think the last few tables, I'll try and rattle through them a bit faster because there's less to say about these ones, I think, which is there's the finance bros table, which is like there's a table with 3 finance guys who are very like lad culture, bro culture. Like they keep on like making like very like charged jokes, and they treat like the staff with like real like just arrogance and rudeness, and they're just basically cunts. That's what they are.
Yeah.
Like ordering things that aren't on the menu, even though this is supposed to be like a pre-prepared experience they're getting, rather than like rather than just a walk-in restaurant.
Well. So for some background, they work for, I don't remember if they ever say the name of the company, but the company they work for is run by someone named Doug Varick, who also owns the island that they're on, as well as the restaurant that Slowick works in. So they feel this sense of entitlement, like, we basically own you guys, so you're going to give us what we want, even if it's not on the menu. Because there's a part where, as a representation of like, you guys are not the common people, and bread is the food of the common people. They serve them, like I said, breadless bread plates. They give them little pallets that don't have anything other than little bits of emulsion lined across the top of the plate. And they're, of course, unhappy about that. They're like, why? We want bread. And so they like call one of the waitresses over and they demand bread. They're like, listen, we understand that you're doing some kind of like deconstructive conceptual bullshit, but like, we want bread. So, maybe go into the kitchen and get us some. And she's like, no. This waitress, by the way, Elsa, she's fucking great. I love her character. She's so funny.
She's amazing. I love the the scene where she's like, these are tortillas. I'm like, yeah, but what is this? This is tortillas.
Yeah, well, basically in this course they're given it's the one with the stabbed chicken thighs. They're also given like little tortillas etched with images that represent, like, for each table, like different problems with like what they basically, like, different tables get different things. Like Anne and Richard get tortillas that have images of Richard with Margot, and she's like, who the fuck is this girl that you're with? These people get tortillas with like bank account statements that like basically prove that their company is engaging in tax fraud. And they're like, what the fuck is this? And they call her over. They're like, what is this? She's like, these are tortillas. He's like, no, I know what they are, but like, what is this? And she's like, these are tortillas. And it's like, fuck, she knows what she's doing. But the scene in question that I was talking about with the bread, like, there's this really fucking great line that I keep thinking about every time I think about this movie, where she like leans into the ear of one of the main douche characters, and and she said, "What's the line? You will eat more than you deserve and less than you desire." Or
Yeah,
did I
something
get
like
that
that.
backwards? You will eat less than you desire.
No,
That
it's.
you will eat.
I think it's.
Yeah,
I think you got it right. I think it's the you will get more than you desire, but less than you deserve.
yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, but so those are these characters. They feel a sense of entitlement. They're also the people that I mentioned earlier who are just sort of there to say that they were there. Like it's just the thing you do, and like now they can brag about it. They have no intention of like actually engaging meaningfully with what's being given to them. They're gonna forget this by tomorrow. But like
Yeah, they just treat it
they
as a
were there,
transactional
yeah.
experience.
Mm-hmm. And then I
there's
guess
a really nice little. Sorry,
go
sorry to
ahead.
interrupt you.
Sorry,
There's a really
please
nice
go
little
ahead.
bit with Doug Verrick in particular, where like the finance bros, whose names I forget. One of them's called Soren, but I can't remember what the other two are called.
And then Bryson
Bryce, I think,
Day.
is one of them. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, there we go. Yeah, and so like they're protesting again, like they're all going to die, and they're like, "Oh, we own your island, we own you, so you have to do what we say." And Slovak's like, "Yeah, no, that's not how this works." Like, and they're like, "Well, Slovak is our, not Slovak, sorry, Varric is our boss. He's your angel investor, so he owns you, so you have to let us go." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And like they look out the window, and Varric's been like is out there in hovering over the ocean, suspended by a wire, dressed up in angel wings, and like Slovak forces them to watch Varric drown. But as it's going on, like Slovak bangs on the window. He's like, as part of the explanation for why Varric deserves to die, he's like, he orders substitutions, even though he knows there are no substitutions here at Hawthorne. Which is like a very funny line, but it is very much that theme of like, the thing that is, in a meta sense, the thematic sense that's being railed against here is like, Varric kind of represents studio producers, right? If we're talking just film production or like art gallery owners or whatever, like the people who are dictating to artists how they need to modify their arts to make it more financially viable, to make them money, to be something, to be commerce, a product. And that's what he's running against. And so, like, the substitutions line, you can kind of view as like, when a studio interferes with the director and they're like, well, we want you to put in this character or this love triangle because we know that'll sell to our focus groups. It's very much that kind of thing. So that line is very funny, but there is like a genuine like kind of oomph behind it.
Yeah.
And then to move on to table 5. I'm sorry, the reason I'm doing this in tables, by the way, is like there's an interview with one of the cast who's like, you can view all the tables collectively as well as representing certain things, in addition to the characters representing certain things. So I want to do that in a bit. Yeah, so table 5 is we have George Diaz, the over-the-hill, washed-up movie star, and his very pretty young assistant, Felicity, who he is also in a sexual relationship with. She's also his girlfriend. And George very much represents like sellouts, artists who phone in their art, formerly great artists, people who are capable of producing real works of merit, who have decided just like they can no longer be asked, no longer be bothered. They're just picking up the paycheck. They're just doing whatever they personally enjoy, and they no longer care about the audience at all. It's just they've completely embraced this culture of art being a product. Felicity, she's a bit more straightforward. She just represents nepotism, straight up. Like, there's a little line, because the thing is, like, she's weirdly sympathetic compared to a lot of the other people on the other tables, and that she's like a very young girl who doesn't seem to have done a lot wrong. And there's a very funny line which almost seems to hammer home how petty Sloak is, because George is like, well, kill us, fine, but why are you going to kill Felicity? She's not done anything. And Sloak's like, where did you go to college? And she's like, I went to Brown. And he's like, do you have any student debts? And she's like, yeah, no. And he's like, I'm sorry, you're going to die. Which seems quite petty, right? And I've genuinely seen people complain that this movie is like a eat the rich message kind of falls flat here, because they're like, oh, you see, this is the pettiness of like socialism or communism or whatever, leftism, because they just want to punish people for being rich. Like, no. If you're paying attention to the film, there are lots of lines early on, particularly when she's talking to George about the fact she's trying to move careers, where you find out that she's gotten pretty much everything she's ever gotten in life, like her job, her connections, everything, through nepotism. Like, she hasn't earned her way anywhere. She's just been given stuff. And her name, by the way, kind of reflects that. Felicity literally means lucky. Like, she is just someone who's ridden her luck and not thought about the fact that it was luck. She's just taking advantage of being born into the right echelon of a culture. And that's what she's being punished for. And then the last proper table before we get to the kind of extra bonus table is table 6, which is Linda. Linda being Slowik's mother, who has been invited along to this procedure. And you may remember I earlier said that Slowik described how when he was young, she was an alcoholic and didn't really look after him properly and didn't defend him from his father. Well, she's still an alcoholic. She has one line in the whole film, and other than that, she spends the whole thing drinking, like even to the point of like getting up to go get more bottles of wine. Even as Slowik badmouths her in front of her face to the entire audience, she doesn't even react when she's told they're all going to die. I guess she kind of got the forewarning, right? But she, I think, represents neglect, just straight up neglect, like in a kind of very general sense, right? Of like the reason we have this culture, as the reason we have, where art goes to die, the reason all this happens, the reason people like Slowik come into existence, or his father come into existence, or any kind of system of entitlement and exploitation comes into existence, is less to do with a select few being bastards, and more to do with like the general neglect that allows them to prosper, that allows them to dominate the conversation. You can't even really call it apathy, because it's not like and they're disengaged. It's just like you're so neglectful of the situation in which you find yourself and the other people around you that you don't even pay attention to the fact that it's all kind of being organized against you or turned into this kind of horrific engine of exploitation.
Yeah, and so those are all the tables and like what they essentially represent. What one thing actually, you were talking about George Diaz and Felicity, and you didn't mention this because it's actually not really worth mentioning, but I just found it interesting. I guess he's credited in the movie as well as like in the script when I was looking at that, just as movie star. Like I guess he wasn't given a name when they wrote the movie. That like maybe that was like retroactive or something, but I found that weird because you mentioned Felicity, like her name had a significance and like was relevant to her character. So like it seems like they put a lot of thought into the names of each character.
Oh like, yeah, all the characters have meaningful names. There's actually something I want to talk about specifically with Slowik's name, because I think it feeds into the kind of we'll get onto this when we talk about the themes of Slowik, right? But and the Silver Door and the Tantalus myth. But there's a kind of secondary story which his name. This is not in the film, right? This is not explicit in the way that the Tantalus door is. But I found very interesting because there is a story tied to his name outside of this film that very, very directly parallels the themes. So I wonder if that was the inspiration. But we'll get to that when we get there. Yeah, all the other cast members have names that are very, very meaningful. Particularly Margot as well. Margot's another one who's got a very.
But then in the script, Diaz was just meant like written as movie star. He didn't have a name, and I just found that particularly weird.
Yeah, there is a with the movie star thing. I don't know if this is why they turned it into just movie star. In a very early draft of the script, before way back in pre-production, the idea was that Daniel Radcliffe was going to be playing that character, but he was just going to be playing himself as Daniel Radcliffe. And the movie that Slowik, actually, I guess we need an explanation here. When George is like, "What did I do wrong?" Slowik is like, "Well, you see, I have one day off every like 4 months, and on my day off, I went to go and watch your movie, Paging Dr. Sunshine, and it was so fucking shit because you clearly didn't give a damn anymore about the art, and you ruined my one day off. And as a fellow artist, I was so offended by you treating your audience so uncaringly that you deserve to die. You are the representation of that now." But the movie that was originally going to be the Frankenstein movie that Daniel Radcliffe did with James McAvoy.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not good.
It's really not good.
That sucks. You'd imagine.
No, it's not. But
Radcliffe and James McAvoy would be like amazing.
Well, the thing is, they're having a great time, which I guess this is why George Diaz's character is like this, right? They're having a great time, but the movie is clearly terrible, and not even in an enjoyable way either. Just like kind of really boringly bad, and a waste of everyone's time. And so I think that was meant to be like a little bit of a joke at Daniel Radcliffe's expense. To be fair to Daniel Radcliffe, I feel like he's very much an actor who would be on board with making that joke about himself, because he was originally attached to be in the movie, but then couldn't. Yeah, absolutely. He's a real legend, Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh god. Sorry, I was checking something on Discord. But yeah, so those were all the tables, and I guess we kind of dived in a little bit to what they represent. How do you want to do this? I'm having trouble figuring out how to break down this movie.
I think the way to do it might be, because I was kind of going to lean into this with my bonus table, because I think the bonus table, when we start talking, which is just Slowick and his stuff, that's when you really get into like the meat of what the film's about, right? Because Slowick is really the driving force of this movie. So yeah, the last table, if you will, which isn't really the table, is the chef's kitchen, where Slowick and his extremely cultish staff, and the cultishness of them is deliberately given quite a lot of spotlighting in the movie, because that in itself is making a point. But Slowick himself is kind of called out at the end. That like Slowick, the reason Slowick thinks he and his staff need to die, in addition to the people he hates, is because it's not just that they've ruined his art, it's that by turning art into what they've turned it into, and by forcing him into a situation where like a person of his level of skill, of his level of passion, that the only audience they can get is this elite group. That has twisted him as well as an artist, like having to adhere to these extremely bad, arbitrary standards of entitlement and hollowness have warped him as a person into being a kind of a dark reflection of the culture he hates. Now he is only aware of this insofar as like he's using himself now as a taker because of the misogyny thing and the sexual exploitation thing. But Margot at the end directly calls this out, where she's like, she gives basically the end of the movie, spoiler, is like, they're approaching the final course. Margot's running out of time to find a way to escape, to survive. Earlier in the movie, when Slowick was trying to like test her to see whether she would die with the chef's table, the givers, or with the scumbags, the takers, she went into his house, or his private house on the island, and his house is constructed in a way where it is directly a copy of the restaurant. And both in the restaurant and in the house, there is a silver door with a kind of image stamped on it of Tantalus from the Greek myth of Tantalus. And when we saw the door in the restaurant, Elsa was asked about its significance, and she just says, "Oh, there's something very special behind that door." But it never opens. We never see what's behind it in the restaurant. But Margot does open it in Slowick's rooms. She opens it up, and in the behind this door, where something very special is nothing. It's just a hollow room with an empty, like a bed, some photos on the wall, and it's just incredibly empty. And that's like Slowick's private rooms, his life. And it's all just these very hollowed out, like unhappy photos of him at like extremely high-end restaurants, including the one where he was first noticed, which was called Tantalus, and was the one where the critic Lillian discovered him. And there's one photo given special prominence, which is it's a newspaper clipping of Slowick when he was just starting out, and he was a line cook in a burger joint in a fast food truck or fast food restaurant. And he's smiling. He's genuinely happy. It's the only smile we've seen on that character's face in the whole movie. There's also a nice little detail of there's a photo of his wife and his child who are never mentioned in the movie. And what's interesting is his wife has actually a passing resemblance to Catherine, the chef that he tried to sexually molest. So there's an interesting like little note there. But the kind of through line of like his private life as the chef and the kind of like cult-like barracks in which his staff reside show how their personal lives have become these hollowed out, empty reflections of the world they're now having to cater to. They very much reflect on a personal level the sheer emptiness and hollowness of the culture they're having to pander to. But Margot sees the photo, the one where he's genuinely happy. And she comes back into the restaurant, and she's got moments before they're all going to die, and she has a realization. She has this epiphany. And she claps her hands together loudly, which is how Chef has been announcing every course, to get Chef's attention. And they all turn around, and she recalls something that Tyler told her earlier in the movie, where he's like, "Oh, you don't send food back in a place like this. It just doesn't happen." And she's like, I don't like your food." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, your food is, even your hot dishes are cold. There is no love in these dishes. You don't cook with love. You cook with obsession." And he's taken aback. He's like, "Well, that's ridiculous. We always cook with love. Love is the most important ingredient. Isn't that right, everyone?" And is like en masse all his like indoctrinated stuff. I'm like, "Yes, Chap." And she's like, "This is a night." She's like, that's bullshit. This is a night for hard truths, according to you. And here's the hard truth: like, you don't cook with love. You cook with obsession. Your hot dishes are cold. Your food is unappealing, tasteless, boring, pretentious. And it's bored. It's like the worst thing is it's fucking boring. Like, you have bored me. Your one purpose on this earth is to make food that people might actually want to eat, and you have failed. And the worst part is I'm still fucking hungry. And he's like, well, what can I get you then? And she's like, you know what I'd really like? I'd like a cheeseburger. And Slowik's face just sort of changes when he realizes what she's doing, because he does realize what she's doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, we can make you a cheeseburger. And she's like, not a pretentious, deconstructed one, a proper one. And he's like, oh, I'll make you a proper one. I'll make you one just like the cheap one your parents bought for you because they couldn't afford anything better. The one that tasted so good because they bought it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the film then does this incredibly loving montage of him making the cheeseburger, which, my God, is fucking orgasmic. Like, every time I watch this movie, I'm like, I must go and get a cheeseburger. Like, I have to, or I will never taste food again.
Just talking about this movie like has made me hungry for a cheeseburger, and I've
oh God, same. God, just give me a cheeseburger, man. And yeah, makes a cheeseburger, plops it down in front of her. She takes a big bite, and she's like, "Now that's a fucking cheeseburger. Like, that's a cheeseburger. That's a real cheeseburger." And then she looks up at him and he's like, "I'd like to take this to go." And he's like, "Okay." Well, she's like, "How much is it going to cost me?" He's like, $10 or $20 or something. And she's like, "Okay." Like, hands him like a crumpled, stained notes that she was carrying around, because of course she carries around cash because she's a working class person. She doesn't carry like expensive bank cards like all the other people do. Pays for this note, takes her burger, and Slurk just lets her go. Just lets her go, even though all the way through the movie he's been like, "No, there are no exceptions. Everyone's going to die today." And what's interesting about this is, like, again, I've seen people do kind of bad reading of this, right? Where they're like, "Oh, well, she gets away because she made him happy again. She made him rediscover his love of cooking." And I'm like, no, that's not what happened. What happened was she was the one person who genuinely engaged with him as an artist. Like, she saw the theme of the menu, she understood it. She saw his life, she understood that. And she plays within that theme to show that she understands it. Within that theme, she adds thematically to the art he is making and gives him a way of because the reason he wouldn't let her go earlier isn't because he wants her to die because reasons. It's because her escaping without any consequence would have thematically ruined the point of what he was trying to say. It would have undermined him, undermined the point of what he was trying to make artistically. So what she's actually done by engaging with his art properly is found a way within his theme to give her an out, which is what he wanted to do, and shown that she has understood it. And she's done that by display. She sends back the pretentious food, the hollow food, the meaningless food that's masquerading as art, and she orders something genuine to go, and he lets her go. And it's such a fucking great moment. And it really sums up like everything in the movie. And it also serves well this myth of Tantalus, because again, to kind of then draw the comparison back to Tantalus and why Tantalus is a theme that this movie pushes as a kind of like piece of visual metaphor. So for those who don't know, Sheev, I know you know because I talked your ear off for ages.
Well, I did my own research after the fact. I it wasn't just you talking my ear off, but yes, you also talked my ear off.
Oh, fair enough. In which case, do you want to take the Tantalus stuff? I'm happy to concede the floor.
Actually, yes. Give me 1 minute though. I'm going to be right back. If you want to at least give them like a brief rundown while I'm gone. Yeah.
I'll give them a brief rundown. So, hello, chat. It's just you and me, you and old Jolly. So, the myth of Tantalus, for those who didn't, like me, grow up with a book of Greek myths because I am a pretentious little nerd. Tantalus was a Greek king who was either, depending on which version of the myth you get, was either beloved of the gods or someone who loved the gods, or someone who was beloved of the gods but viewed them as sort of bastards, didn't really like them very much. And so what he did is he invited them round to a big dinner at his house, and he served them up this delicious pie, this delicious stew. Sorry, not pie, because it's ancient Greece. Delicious stew, which turns out to be made out of his son, Pelops. And the reason he does this, other than apparently not liking his son very much, is to test the omniscience of the gods and to mock them. He's basically saying, like, you are no true gods if you and my test for you is that would you even know I was feeding you a person, you supposedly almighty wonderful beings. Now in the myth they do cotton on and they punish him, Tantalus. He gets sent to the fields of Tartarus, which is hell in Greek mythology, And his punishment is that he has to sit in a pool of wine with a fruit tree hanging over his head with the fruit dangling. But every time he stoops his head to drink the wine, it vanishes. And every time he lifts his head to grab the grapes, it's pulled out of his reach. He is constantly tantalized, which is where we get the word from, with the possibility of satisfaction that he can never have, and as a punishment for testing the gods.
Yeah. So I don't know if our read on this is different, but like I feel like Tantalus is very clearly meant to be Slowic, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool. When you were originally telling me about this, I thought you were saying that I thought it was reversed. Like you were telling me that Tantalus was like represented by the elite of the film, but like after looking into it more, it very clearly is like he was like in the film he is testing the gods.
Yeah,
like,
and they
like
fail.
in a very literal sense. Although the difference is, sorry, I got a cheeseburger. But the difference is these gods don't actually know when they're being served shit, basically. They cannot tell the difference, and that's the point.
Yeah, they failed the test. They are no true gods. And the interesting thing is, like, what's interesting as well is there's a kind of inversion of the myth going on, because, like, unlike in the myth where Tantalus tests the gods, fails, and is then punished, here Slowic has already been punished, and that's why he's angry, and that's why he's testing the gods. He's like, I have been saddled with this punishment, because, like, in the same way that Tantalus is stuck in the pool of wine and fruit without ever being able to gain satisfaction, Slowic, as a result of rising meteorically through the kind of ranks of culture, has arrived at a point where his art is now utterly unappreciated. He cannot get artistic satisfaction anymore, which is the sole purpose of his life. The thing he loves being and doing is being ripped away from him. So he's constantly in a situation where he's making art for people who don't understand it. And so he's always like, he can see artistic satisfaction. It's within reach, but it's always tugged just out of his grasp, and it's driven him mad with rage. Wow, that's super chat.
Hang on, let me check that. From Smiller Live, 82. What is that symbol?
I think that's yen, isn't it?
82 yen. Okay. Why do you promote communist propaganda? So, is the G supposed to be for jolly? Oh, whatever. Hello.
Maybe.
Hello, my friend. It's not yen. What is it then? I know who this is, by the way. This is Emperor Articulates. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the super chat. TG, what are you saying right now?
It's Johnny Yen.
Oh.
Yeah, the Jolly Chap.
You finally got it. Only took like 8 tries.
got there in the end. But yeah, to get back to what we were talking about, yeah, it's a kind of inversion, right? Because, like, he's already been punished. He's already become Tantalus because of his culture, and now he's taking his revenge on the gods who put him there. Is basically the through line. And there's a little bit, which again, like, this is actually interesting because you and I not disagree. I think we just kind of have different levels of, like, to which we're allowing the film this thematically. Because the original ending of the movie, right? I said before, the silver door in the restaurant never opens. We never see what's behind it. We only ever see what's behind it in Slowik's house, the copy of the restaurant. The original ending of the movie was at the end of the last course, the entire restaurant is blown up. They all burn to death and go down in flames. And then the original ending of the movie was that the next morning, firefighters were going to put out the fire. They were going to open the silver door, and on a silver platter inside was going to be Slowik's head and Slowik's severed hands, holding a copy of the menu. As in the menu that he was serving to the guests, not a copy of the movie itself. It's not that matter. But that was the original ending, and for me, watching the movie, I think that was the intended thematic payoff to this idea of the hollowness of, in the dark reflection that is the chef's personal lives. Essentially, I can't remember exactly how I phrased it. I did send it to you in a message. I can't really pull it up because of how my microphone's wired. Sheev, would you mind pulling it up for me? Because I think that's the best explanation of it. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Yes. Shit, I have to find it though. Let's see.
It's in our chat. I don't think it's too far back.
No, I know. I'm looking for it. Always Originally, the ending was going to be that firefighters the next morning open it to find Slowik's head on a platter with a copy of the evening's menu. As it is in the film, it represents the vanished meaning of the hollow art produced by the restaurant when catering to the elite. A gaudy silver frame with the promise of something special behind it, but one that remains closed to the diners. Whereas its mirror is Slowik's house, in Slowik's house leads to his personal rooms, which are empty and miserable and filled with regret.
Yeah, right. So that's what I was getting at. It was like, as it is in the film, we have these entitled guests being like, "Ooh, shiny silver door. What's behind the special door?" And Elsa's like, "Oh, it's very special. Don't you worry, it's super special." And then they're never given it. Like they never get that payoff because they don't deserve it, and they don't understand it. They don't understand the payoff of art. Whereas when we see it in the reflection of it in through Margot's eyes in the house, it's hollow and empty, and that's supposed to be the thing of like, oh, the promise of something shiny and great and wonderful, but actually this culture has hollowed it out. There's nothing actually there anymore. It's just a shiny door with nothing behind it. And like that's how it is as the film stands. But the original ending, I think, added an extra bit to that, which is like when you open the door that the elites couldn't get through, that they couldn't understand, it's a big fuck you to them. Like basically is what it is. It's the culmination of that. Like you have hollowed out art, and here's the big middle finger because you don't understand. I mean, literally, he gives them the finger in the movie, right? Like towards the end of the film, he gives them all a gift bag, despite the fact they're not leaving, which is like some homemade bran and a copy of our suppliers and a copy of the menu, and one of Doug Verrick's fingers. So he literally gives them all the finger on their way out. And I think that scene, the gift bag scene, I think may have been an addition once they took out the severed head stuff at the end.
Right. So you might even say that due to studio interference, there were in fact substitutions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think again the finger in the bag is a subtle nod to that as well, because the studio would like take it out. It's too gory, and they're like, okay, sure, we'll take it out and put another scene in that's basically the same exact thing, and you won't notice because you're not paying attention.
Damn.
Because you guys are who we're fucking criticizing. This film is so fucking like salty. I love it.
Well, yeah, I've heard people say it's like, like obviously it is, but like they say this is a criticism. It's cynical and it just hates everyone, and it's excuse me, and it's angry at the world, and it's like, well, I mean, with the state of art that it's in right now, like I would make a movie like this, like I appreciate that this film exists because it's calling out a lot of people that are around right now, basically ruining the thing that I love. I'm glad this movie exists. I'm glad that it has this message and has this point that it's trying to make.
Yeah, and I'm glad that, and also for people who are like, it's too cynical, it's worth pointing out the film criticizes the artists as well, right? Because like even Slowik, who is the one drawing attention to this, who's angry about this, Margot points out, right, and she's the audience, she's meant to be like the genuine audience. She's pointing out like, yeah, but you've become this as well in a way that even you don't really realize. Like you cook with obsession. You're more concerned with a technical craft than you are with actually saying things now. Like it's all become like a complexity addiction in a way. Like, and so like a lot of these artists who are like raging don't realize that they've kind of been sucked into this culture as well. And that's kind of like, the film points that out. And arguably you could level that criticism at the film itself. The film is self-aware of that.
Yeah. The myth of Tantalus. I wanted to go over that with you. I mean, we already did. But like I wanted to go over that with you specifically because I wanted to make sure we were on the same page there. Or maybe if you had like a different, better reading of it. But it seems like we're in agreement. So
I mean, there's kind of two readings of it, right? Because there's two different versions of the myth. And I think both of them work in the context of the film. So the first one, which is the one we kind of covered already, is Tantalus testing the gods, and that being why he was punished. But there's actually another version of the myth where, which is almost like not an inversion, but like almost thematically like a kind of pale reverse of it, where the Tantalus's transgression isn't serving up his son to the gods. It's he is invited to the table of the gods up in Mount Olympus, and he steals the food of the gods, which is ambrosia and nectar, to bring back to his own people to try and make them immortal. And that's why he's punished in that version of the myth. And I think that's interesting because, again, like, not only is Tyler kind of a representation of that kind of Tantalus, the person who's trying to, steal from artists things that they couldn't possibly comprehend or understand. I mean, arguably, everyone in the restaurant is that to a certain degree, and that's part of what the film's calling out. So again, I think that sense, if you treat Slowick and the artists as the gods, the audience becomes Tantalus. And if you're doing the version of the myth where Tantalus is punishing the gods, Slowick becomes and his team become Tantalus, and the audience become these false gods. But either way, it works. And I think, to be fair to the film, I think it is aware of both readings, because the Tantalus symbolism is so on the nose, and because as well, there are many points in the movie where Slowick drops in, almost because he's like taunting them without them realizing it. He drops in details that don't match up with previous details he's dropped, or that are like hinting at hint at what's to come in ways that, like, if you're paying attention, you are going in open-minded, would start ringing alarm bells, and they do start ringing alarm bells for Margot, who is that person. But everybody else is like, either doesn't notice it or dismisses it. So you have scenes like, for example, like I mentioned earlier during the taco scene, Slowick's like, "Oh, I grew up in Iowa," but then during a later scene, he's like, "Well, growing up in Bratislava," and Margot rolls her eyes because she's like, "What the fuck?" But no one else notices. Mm-hmm. They're not even paying attention, even though they know they're dying. Even though the situation becomes serious, they still can't pull themselves out of this kind of like performative roles that they become embedded in. They can't actually give a shit about the art at an artistic level.
Oh well, to be fair, I'll give these people this. When you realize that you're trapped in this place by like a bunch of fucking zealots with knives and cleavers that are going to kill you, I probably wouldn't be paying much attention to what Slowick's saying. I'd be trying to figure out a way to fucking leave. I would very much like disengage at that point, but.
Sure, but like that's kind of the point the film's making, right? Of like, they just kind of panic. They don't really engage in an active plan either, because they're takers, not givers. They don't proactively do anything for themselves. They passively take what is given to them or taken from others to give to them.
This is even pointed out at the end of the film. Slowick says, like, you guys realize that had you actually banded together and tried to escape, you probably could have.
Yeah, at least some of them could have. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Little things as well. Yeah, because they just, there's a kind of like, do you know what the Milgram experiment is?
No. Please explain to me and my audience.
So the Milgram experiment was a psychological experiment. You've probably heard it referenced, if not by name, then certainly like what it was about. And the experiment was they took random people, and they put them in a situation where like you're sitting on one side of a wall with a kind of radio, and you're told that on the other side of the wall is a person hooked up to electrodes, and you've got all the switches to like shock them at greater and greater voltages. And the people were told that this was like as part of a memory test to see if people could like how memory performed under pressure. And in the room with them, the people who have access to the volt buttons, was a random person in a white coat who they were told was a scientist on the study, but who wasn't. And as the voltages increased, obviously these aren't real voltages, but as they thought they were increasing the voltages, in the other room, they would hear like, escalating sounds of distress. Like first it was like, ow, but as it went on, it was like screaming and pain and hysterics. And every time they like got a bit like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, the guy in the coat was only allowed to give one of 3 scripted responses, which he could only give, in order in once. And if they made it all the way through, he would tell them the real nature of the experiment and they'd be allowed to go. But nobody got there, where he would be like, oh, you must continue the experiment. The experiment demands that you continue, or something like that. And they all carried on, even to the point of like shocking the other person, quote unquote, to death. They carried on because a person in what they perceived as authority was telling them to do it. And they trusted implicitly in the kind of culture of authority that had been built up around it. And so like their reactions in this movie, like the elite's reactions to the situation they find themselves in, where they are not proactive, where they are, even towards the end, but like at the final scene, when they all shout, "Yes, chef," they join in, or "Thank you, chef," rather. They all join in. They all sort of passively whispered, like, "Thank you, chef," as well. And part of what the movie is saying there is like, because of the culture of taking, right, that these people are so embedded in that culture of being so dependent on the work of others, and so enmeshed in what the culture is telling them is the proper response to a situation, that they have lost their ability to fight back. They've lost their ability to imagine for themselves, or be proactive, or be creative. It's even pointed out, right, with like the critic most of all, who is the most performative member of the audience, of the elite. Again, spoilers for the movie. The big turning point in the film is they introduce course, I think it's course 4, called Jeremy's Mess.
Yeah.
And Jeremy's Mess is the right hand chef, so the direct sous chef underneath Slurk, is brought out. He's stood on a tarpaulin rug, and Slurk's like, "Oh, this is Jeremy. He's made your next course. He designed it." And Jeremy is a very gifted chef, but he'll never be as good as me. He is ultimately like a failure because he sees what I have and he wants it and he doesn't understand it. And Slurk is making the point right, like Jeremy is a kind of stand-in for people who are desperately working their way up the ranks of this culture, not because they actually care about the arts, but because they want to just be at the top. And so they don't understand how shitty it actually is to be in Slurk's position because they just haven't thought about it. And the comeuppance for Jeremy, the thing that kicks off the course, is Jeremy puts a gun in his mouth and he blows his fucking brains out in front of all of them. And like half of them react as you would expect, like, oh, fucking hell, the guy's just blowing his brains out. But Lillian, the critic, is like, oh, what a wonderful piece of theatre. It's all performance. Don't worry, everyone. Like, of course it's an act. Even when a guy is literally blowing his fucking brains out in front of her eyes refuse to let her believe it. She's so entrenched in this idea, this performance, this culture of performativity. And again, like that's the kind of thing, right? With all these details being dropped, because it's not just the Bratislava versus Iowa thing. There's also things like the early parts of the menu before Slurk is introduced, like the starter that they get on the boat and the amuse-bouche that they get, very strongly hint at the ending of the movie, particularly the amuse-bouche. Is very much a visual metaphor for the ending of the film, where they all burn to death, and none of them pick up on it, even when it's in front of their face. That this is the end goal of the menu. It's very directly put in front of their face. Because the amuse-bouche, for those who haven't watched the film, is it's a kind of showcase of ingredients from the islands, where it's like cucumber and melon pieces that then cut into little bits, put onto milk snow to look like ash. So there's a plate of little representations of its audience covered in burning ash and a burned piece of lace. Heralding the end of the movie, where they're all going to burn to death. But they don't notice because they're not paying attention. And in a similar vein, there's a point in the movie where I think Margot is the one who found like the fake CB radio, and she thinks she's phoned for help, but actually it's a setup by Slurk where he's put it in place in case anyone actually managed to get to the radio. Where one of the kitchen staff turns up dressed as a Coast Guard and pretends to help them for a few seconds or a few minutes before like pulling the rug on them. And if you're paying attention in the movie, you would see that guy was standing by the door in like staff uniform for like a third of the movie. They all walk past him like multiple times. In fact, when they cut off Richard's finger when he tries to escape, the person who grapples him back is the Coast Guard, but none of them notice because they're not paying attention, because they can't engage.
I actually didn't even notice that, and I've seen the movie twice, so there's that.
Oh no, you're an elite, Sheev. It's time for you to die.
I know. I'm not engaging properly with the art and with the film.
Oh my god.
To be fair about this movie, like there are just so many layers, right? That you're not going to pick up on it on first viewing, and apparently there's a lot that's gonna go over your head even on second viewing. I told Jolly this while I was rewatching it and taking notes. I was like, I feel like a lot of this is still going over my head, but I'm doing my best.
Oh yeah, even like just to confess one that went completely over my head the first time I watched it, because I know fuck all about CB radios. But there's one of that with the actual radio that Margot's using, right? Because I had to have a friend of mine who actually knows this explain this to me. Basically, the Coast Guards don't use CB radios because they just don't have the range, right? So they're kind of fucking useless. What they actually use is VHF. And so whilst the radio is set to the correct channel, it's on the incorrect frequency, if that makes sense. Not frequency, whatever the difference between the CB and the VHF radio is. Like it's using the wrong bandwidth, basically. In fact, the channel 16 on a CB radio isn't even monitored by the Coast Guard because they just don't consider it, to have any point. So if Margot, I guess, had been more aware of that detail, she would have cottoned on to the deception ahead of time. But obviously, like that's a very hard one to pick up on. But it is kind of funny that it's there. Similarly, for those who are like food buffs in the real world, which admittedly I am, my mother's a chef. She trained in Paris in a Michelin restaurant, so like I'm a big foodie. I apologize. I am pretentious. I'm French, so I'm allowed to be pretentious.
Literally linguini.
But the menu, the food items. I am literally controlled by a rat who guides my every motion, yes. There isn't actually a jolly chap, there's just a John rat sitting on my head underneath my toque. But yeah, so like the food items in the menu, they're designed by a real life chef called Dominique Crenn, who is I think she's the only female chef in America who's got 3 Michelin stars. She's also a fucking legend. I strongly recommend you look her up. She's really lovely. And then like the final dessert course that they use, the s'mores, the flaming s'mores, the patterns they draw on the floor of the restaurant in chocolate is meant to be like a kind of an allusion to I think it's called Alinea, which is a kind of high-end restaurant in America. I can't remember where it is. It might be Chicago. Things like that, and also like the fact that Slowick calls people donkey is a reference to Gordon Ramsay. So like there's lots of these little details peppered in, and I think even like Catherine, I think her surname in the movie is like Catherine Keller, which I think might be a reference to Thomas Keller, who's the chef of the Michelin star restaurant, the French Laundry. So lots of these little details peppered everywhere. It's a very, very rich film.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't notice like any of that. So that's but
I mean, to be fair, with the Dominic Crenn, I had to go looking for it because there's no way to know that from just watching the movie. I was just interested.
Yeah, well, I mean, that sounds like you were just engaging with the art and like going above and beyond to make sure that you understood what you just seen, which, kind of ruins my plans because I was going to end this by setting us both on fire, dousing us in chocolate and like putting marshmallows and graham cracker hats on us.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm glad I avoided it then. That fate. That fate would have been terrible. So I'm glad I will not be burnt to death in a giant s'more hat.
I love s'mores. I don't give a shit what Slowick says. They're great.
I mean, he's kind of right about it. I've never had s'mores. They're very much an American thing. Like, I've had marshmallows everywhere. I've never had s'mores.
I don't know. I don't see anything wrong with just taking great things and putting them together and roasting them over a fire. It's so simple. It's so sweet. It's so delicious. S'mores are great.
What does he say about them? Because he gives like a breakdown of the ingredients, right? Because like they represent everything that's terrible about food.
Yes, I don't think I wrote down specifically what he said, but like, fuck, let me pull up the script actually, because I know
I think he's like it's unethical. It's like unethically sourced chocolates, gelatinous like sugar water, stuck between like industrial graham crackers, and then burned. I think that's the description he gives. I'm trying to remember it. He's very dismissive. He's like, this is a terrible piece of, basically the reason he picks the small right is like it's something that is born of like almost pure exploitation, but which has been given this kind of shallow veneer of being like comfy and naive and innocent and childlike, and that's kind of like the final encapsulation of how he views his audience, right? Of like the kind of horrific version of art culture that they bred.
Yeah, oh, here it is. And now our final dessert course is a playful twist on a comfort food classic. The s'more, the most offensive assault on a human palate ever contrived. Unethically sourced chocolate and gelatinized sugar water imprisoned by industrial-grade biscuit. It's everything wrong with us, yet we associate it with innocence, childhood, mom and dad. But what transforms this fucking monstrosity is fire. The purifying flame. It nourishes us, warms us, reinvents us, forges and destroys us. We must celebrate. We must embrace the flame. We must be cleansed like martyrs or heretics. We can be subsumed and made anew.
Yeah, there's a kind of like Phoenix metaphor as well, particularly for Margot, who's like sitting on the boat watching it all burn. Like she's literally been reborn at the end. Well, not literally. She's not literally been reborn. She has thematically been reborn. Yeah, she has reemerged from the cocoon that was this traumatic experience with a renewed understanding of art. Actually, just a little detail while I remember off the top of my head, which is kind of interesting, which is the name of the restaurant, Hawthorne. Because like Hawthorne flowers, they were really strongly associated. Like they're very beautiful, but they smell like rotting bodies. They were very strongly associated with like illness and plague and disease and corruption. And so I guess that's, that's part of the restaurant, right? Like it's this veneer of beauty hiding a kind of like rotten core.
I mean, I would absolutely name my restaurant after a flower that smells like death. I feel like that's appealing.
Yeah, well, it's also like there's the thing of like like not only thematically like resonant with the movie, it's also like these people are going to go eat at a restaurant that is like named after a flower that smells like corpses, and they're not giving it a second thought.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know how long Slowick has been planning this. Presumably not for that long. Like, and I imagine that he's run this restaurant and it's been like known as Hawthorne for several years, way longer than he was planning the menu. But like, I'd like to imagine part of him named it Hawthorne just to see if anyone would notice, if anyone would realize that it's named after a flower that smells like corpses, and nobody did.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can kind of view it as because obviously, like, I agree with you. I don't think he was planning the menu for years, right? I think what's happened is like the naming of the restaurant is part of that arc, right? Where he's built up this kind of dissatisfaction, and he's like, before the let's kill them all stage, which to be fair wasn't even his idea; it's Catherine's idea. Let's give her credits. Like before and her umeboshi, because we do need to mention her umeboshi. It was delicious.
Yeah.
Her emoji. before he got to the murder the mall stage, I think he would have named his restaurant quite cynically. I think that cynicism probably preceded the menu a fair amount.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, of course, yeah. I honestly think that the final nail in the coffin was like he'd been thinking these things for years, and then he went and watched Calling Dr. Sunshine, and he was like, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck all of you. That was the last straw.
Yeah, it wasn't even the realization that he'd like become his father and sexually molested someone and become exploited. It's just how bad that movie was. So it's like, no, humanity doesn't deserve to survive anymore. I mean, fair, because I have that reaction to The Flash. So
you haven't even seen The Flash. You fucking.
No, but I have seen many things of it. Like I've seen the cameos, and I've seen the ending. So.
That's the thing is like if I had 4 days if I had 1 day off every like 4 months and the movie that I chose to see on that day off was The Flash, I would also probably do some kind of deconstructive eat the rich avant-garde bullshit.
Yeah, some extremely homicidal piece of art.
I would definitely be driven to murder. I won't lie. I sympathize with Slowick in this way.
The thing I'd like to do as well, because I think we've covered the theme quite well, but before we in terms of the character work, right? So before we go on to like the dishes themselves, I think there's actually quite a lot to talk about with the dishes and what they represent. Can I run my little Slowick theory past you that I mentioned? Sure. Because I'm intrigued whether people will think about this as like plausible. So Slowick's name is Polish, and it means nightingale, like the bird, the nightingale. Mm-hmm. The thing I remembered was, because again, this is the child I read very pretentious books as a child. I read Oscar Wilde's The Nightingale and the Thorn, which is a short story that Oscar Wilde wrote. And it's kind of thematically very on point with this film. So the idea is there's a nightingale sitting in a tree, and it overhears a university student, crying because he wants to ask this girl to a dance, and she won't look twice at him. And so he's upset. Because he insists he's in love with her, and desperately wants to go to this dance with her. And the nightingale is very moved. The nightingale's like, well, I of all the birds understand love, because I am a bird that represents love, and I feel sorry for this guy. So I'm going to go to all the rose bushes because the student mentions like, oh, if only I could give her a rose. She loves roses. If I could give her a red rose, she'd go to the dance with me. And so the nightingale's like, okay. I will go and find this man his red rose. I will go and get him a red rose. The nightingale goes around to all the bushes, all the rose bushes, all the rose trees, in turn, and asks for their help. And each one is like, well, I'm a yellow rose bush. You should go to that one. Or I'm a pink rose bush. You should go to that tree. And finally, the nightingale gets to the red rose tree. And the red rose tree is like, well, I'd love to help you, but it's not the season for flowers. It's nearly winter. So if you want the flower, I need color to work with. So if you prick your heart on one of my thorns and bleed, I can use your blood to make this beautiful flower for your students. And so the nightingale sings all night outside the student's bedroom window, pressing its breast into this thorn, bleeding to death, so that the one red flower can be made for the student to go and realize his love. And the Nightingale, come morning, the rose is ready, and the Nightingale gives one last look at the student through the window and then collapses dead. It's all of its lifeblood has been spent on this piece of art, on this piece of this beautiful thing. And the student's overjoyed. He grabs the rose and he runs down to the girl's house. He gives her the rose, and she's like, "Nah, a rose is great, but this other guy gave me jewels, and they're way better. So I'm going with him." And so the student leaves. He gets angry and he throws the rose into the gutter. And he's like, "Love is stupid. I'm going to just concentrate on science from now on in my work." And he walks right past the dead body of the Nightingale and doesn't even notice. And the story ends. And so I was like, I kind of think there's like an element of like paralleling here, because Slowick is that Nightingale, right? Like he is literally the Nightingale who has poured out his lifeblood for things that people don't appreciate.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that sounds plausible.
Yeah, I have no idea whether that's true or not. I hope it is, but like it's a nice little. I can't think of any other reason, given how pretty much every character, in fact every character in the story, has been given a name that is thematically, the etymology of which is thematically appropriate. So, for example, like Margot, the fake name that Margot has is means pearl, and she is literally the pearl in the oyster from the beginning, right? She's the only one who appreciates an oyster for being an oyster, and not as a pretentious piece of shit. She is the salvageable beauty out of the shitstorm that is this audience. But like, so they all have kind of thematic names, and so with Slowick, I'm like, why would they call him Nightingale? What's the connection? Why is that resonant? What's the theme here? And that's the only thing I could think of off the top of my head. But I think it tracks. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's certain. I've not seen anything from the director to confirm it or the writers to confirm it. But maybe.
I get the feeling that you're probably right. I just get the sense that the people who wrote this movie are very, obviously like immersed in literature. They've probably read that story. That's probably the reason they named him Slowick, because like, what a random name to give your character, Slowick. It's just, and like we already went over, like, yeah, a lot of these different characters' names have a meaning that is resonant with like what they represent in the film. So like, no, you're probably right. So it's a neat little theory. It's not confirmed, but it's probably true.
Side note, before we move on, just a quick thing. My microphone proxy is very low on battery, so if I suddenly cut out and fall out of the stream, I will rejoin via my laptop. So don't worry, I will be back if that happens. But just as a forewarning.
If that does happen, I will break down and start crying, and I won't stop until you're back. So you better hurry.
Well, in that case, I'll just pull up the stream and listen to it and listen to you crying, and then we're like, yeah, I think Sheev really misses me. I feel like genuinely moved. I shall return.
I feel like the Nightingale who's poured all of my lifeblood onto this rose, and I've given it to you, and you've forsaken me, Jolly.
I didn't appreciate your art. I took it for granted. I'm a taker, not a giver.
Oh.
Anyway. Don't worry, I'll get my comeuppance. Yeah, anyway, so menu items.
Yes. There are how many courses? 6? 7?
Oh no, there are 12 courses.
Nice.
So the very first one is on the boat to the island. They are all given a lemon caviar served on oyster. Discuss.
A lemon caviar served on oyster. So Jolly, you need to understand something about me. I'm not a foodie. I've never eaten oyster or caviar for that matter. Although you were just saying that Margot, like by her name, is like representative of of the pearl in the oyster. Yeah. So is there something there that I'm supposed to be extracting?
Oh no. That's as far as Margot's depth on this one goes. There's I think some interesting stuff. Let's put out the simple stuff first, right? Just character work. So Tyler, because Margot is like, Tyler's like, oh, this is amazing, it's genius, and Margot's like, well, yeah, I love oysters. Oysters are great. And he's like, no, you don't get it. You don't understand it. And he like lectures down to her pretentiously about how the oyster is supposed to be like the beginning of a theme, which it is, but it's one that he doesn't get, and that she finally does get later in the movie. It's like he's really pretentious. In fact, there's a scene earlier on where he's talking about they're watching the chef cook, and he's like, oh look, it's a Paco jet, and she's like, what the fuck is that? And he's like, oh, it's a specialized piece of equipment. I have one at home. And the thing about that piece of equipment is like, there's no earthly reason why any home cook would ever fucking need a Paco jet, given what the fuck it's used for. So him having it is just him being a pretentious douchebag. There's no way he actually uses it for anything.
So Jolly,
but yeah,
just for the audience, what is a Paco jet?
So a Paco jet is a way of oh god, I'm trying to remember which round it is. It's either thawing or freezing something. But basically, it's a way to very quickly change the temperature of a particular kind of food item without destroying the consistency of that food item. I think it's for like not ice creams. The exact purpose of it is escaping me because I don't have one, because I don't use one, because I'm not a pretentious chef. But like, it is a very specialized piece of equipment. It's something that you would never see outside of a professional kitchen. There's no reason to, because it's only used in situations where you're having to serve food exact consistencies on demand very quickly. So him the only one is just him being a dick. But yeah, like that. Feeding back to the oyster scene, he gives Margot this very long-winded and pretentious like description of the lemon caviar and the oyster, and he gives like a thematic explanation of it that is fucking wrong, just all wrong. And that kind of sets him up as being like someone who pretends he knows a lot about it, knows about it in theory, but actually knows fuck all, and doesn't really appreciate the world he's trying desperately to kind of like hang on to.
Wow.
There's also like a very simple thing here, which is both caviar, well, less so caviar, but definitely for oysters. Oysters are one of those foods that they started off historically as being like very much the food of the poor. If you had like go back 5,000 years ago, or even like 200 years ago, oysters were a thing that were served to the poor. They were not eaten by the rich. They were very, very cheap. They weren't considered to be particularly delicious, and thus they were the fare of the working class. However, because they are very difficult to transport for any length of time without going off, a bit like lobsters, which is also why this happened to lobsters, they became the food of the rich because it became a financial status symbol that you could afford to have them brought inland without them going off. And so what previously had been a food of the poor became heavily industrialized and marketized and commercialized and re-engineered, where the poor no longer ate it. They could no longer get it. Instead, all their time was devoted in that industry to farming it for consumption by the rich. And so it's thematically laying out the first step of like Slowick's point about givers and takers. Because it's an oyster, a food of the poor that's been appropriated, with caviar, a food of the very, very, very rich historically, on top with a pretentious flavoring. Yeah, there are some just like on the subject of the history of oysters, there are like just two little historical details which I find very funny. So they're nothing to do with the film, but I just want to mention them because they're funny. So there used to be like a Roman guy who was so famous for being able to produce oysters, like farm oysters, that like it became like a Roman saying that the guy could like grow oysters on the roof of his fucking house, and that just became like a general saying for being able to do the impossible, which I find kind of endearing. But the other thing is like they're actually responsible, actually again through being the food of the poor and not being understood by the wealthy. They are actually responsible for one of the worst losses of life in an English army in all of history. So, basically, under Henry V, he of Shakespearean fame, Henry V invaded France in the 15th century, and the first thing he did was he attacked a coastal town called Harfleur, which had very thick walls. It was also like very marshy, and there were lots of oysters around for the men to eat. And because they hadn't brought enough provisions for a long siege, the men started eating the oysters on the recommendation of Henry and his commanders. But what they didn't know was that like if you eat unwashed oysters that have grown in the filth of a river that's outside a town where people throw their shit into, you're going to make your men very ill. And so about half his army died from a disease that we don't know exactly what it was, but it was recorded in history as the bloody flux. And basically they shit themselves to death. Very unpleasant, and the result of rich people not understanding how to properly cook and eat the food of the poor. Because they're too focused on exploiting other people. Well, yeah, so interesting little historical side note. But that's pretty much all there is to say about the first dish, which is by far and away the simplest. But I think it does thematically set up the film quite nicely.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know any of that, but again, it's like this is something that you can just tell that the people who wrote this movie like thought about when they wrote it. It wasn't just, hey, let's serve them oysters because oysters are things that are eaten by the rich.
Oh yeah, I mean the level of like artistic integrity. I think the best way of putting it in this movie, right? Of like these are artists who so clearly gave a shit. Like people skated over this movie, right? It didn't really make much of a wave when it first dropped, and it's such a crying shame because this movie is like the antithesis of everything that is wrong currently with mass media production. And it was so nice to see that like there are people in the industry who understand this and recognize this and who are appalled by it and who actually go the extra effort to make sure that everything is thematically resonant, that every detail matters, that every acting performance is carries weight in the film, everything is going somewhere. It's oh god, it just brings so much joy to me that we can talk about a film like this. You have no idea.
Oh, and Tyler's a condescending piece of shit. That's just gonna prevail throughout the entire movie, but it's set up immediately in like the first scene. However, he's also like one of my favorite characters because he's just so absurd, and I love him.
Oh yeah, and let's give our props to him. Nicholas Holt's performance is flawless for him. Like he really sells this character to a T. Like this character is such a hate sink. Like because for the first part of the movie, it was like, oh, he's really weird, but like I guess he's just really like into it. And then like you get the reveal of the fact that he knew this was going to happen all the time, and he's such a piece of shit.
Well, so even before that, because that's the moment where you're like, fuck you, Tyler, fuck you, go to hell. But before that, like when shit really starts hitting the fan, like when what's his name?
Richard's finger gets off?
No, the
sous Jeremy.
Jeremy, yeah. When Jeremy fucking blows his brains out, everyone else reacts normally, except again, like you said, Bloom, who's trying to rationalize it as theater. But Tyler just doesn't give a shit. He just keeps eating as if nothing like significant happened. And then there are multiple times where like bad things are happening, like Richard getting his finger chopped off, and he's just not paying attention. He's just eating his food.
Yeah, and he's rude to all the staff.
Yeah, and this is all before like it's revealed that he knew going in. So you're just sitting there like, what is this dude's problem? What the fuck? And yeah, he is rude to the staff. I really like the part where he is talking to Jeremy about the Paco jet. Trying to throw out like, oh, I know what that is. I own one. Yeah. And then the guy says, why don't you take a seat? And like refers to him by name. And then they go to sit down and he says, he knew my name. And Margot's like, yeah, I noticed you didn't ask for his. And it's just a tiny little line. I was like, I like that.
Well, it's that thing, right, about exploiting, bigger take, exploiting the working class. It happens several other times, right? Like there's two times. So with Margot, it's like, it's revealed that he brought her there as a disposable +1, that she was just there to die. But also like there's a bit where like she's like pushing back on his bullshit, and he like snaps at her like, I'm the one paying, so I get to decide. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, fuck you, man. And like there's the other thing as well, like even when he's being complimentary to her near the beginning, if you listen to exactly what he's saying, he's basically like describing her in the most like shallow, like simplistic, like almost like faintly dirty about it, like grimy, where he's like, oh, I like how cool you are, and I like how like shiny and beautiful you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically as far as it goes. Like he doesn't give a fuck about her beyond the fact that like she represents a kind of culture that he likes, like this kind of culture of coolness and artistic like beauty. He likes that, but he doesn't actually like the people who actually are that. He just likes the kind of idea of it, and he's dismissive of the people who serve it to him. He's such a piece of shit. He really is just the worst person.
Well, I like that part where because like in Man's Folly, when Slowick gives them all all the men a chance to run and try to escape the island, and all the women have to stay inside. He just doesn't go, and Slowick is like, no, you too, and he kind of runs off like daintily. And then like later, you like when you're watching the women in the restaurant sit at the table and talk about like, we could, you don't have to kill us, it's okay. And Catherine's like, no, killing you guys was my idea. That scene, you just see him like staring at them through the window, like he's not even trying to run. He wants back in.
He's the outsider staring in through the window. That's who he is. Yeah. That's what his character is.
So it's a really funny moment, but it's also like actually like thematically resonant.
Yeah, there isn't a single throwaway moment in this film. Everything means something, even when it doesn't seem to be. It's so good. Everyone go and watch this fucking movie, please. Give this thing more traction. I want to see more stuff like this.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the main reason we're doing this this stream. Not even just because we wanted to talk about something good for a change, but because like we want you guys to actually see this movie. We think it should have been seen by more people. I mean, to be fair, I didn't see it in the theater. I don't. Jolly, did you see it in theaters?
No, I saw it on Disney Plus.
Yeah, we didn't catch it when it came out. A lot of people didn't, and it kind of flew under the radar, and that sucks because. I mean, because I remember seeing the trailer for it, and I was like, I don't know, that looks fine. I got to stop judging movies by trailers, because I mean, I did the same thing with Puss in Boots 2, only when I saw the trailer for that, I was like, that looks terrible. I'm not going to watch that shit. And then it ended up being great, so...
Well, it's the people making the trailers are the same industry that's making all the shit, right? So, like, the trailers are just showing what they think will sell the movie, which is the most, like, shallow and like, you know, if this was, if Disney Star Wars had been doing the menu, they'd be like, look, it's Nicholas Hoult. Look, it's Anya Taylor-Joy. Hey, you remember Ralph Fiennes? You remember these people? Go watch the movie.
Dude, if I was like an editor for big, like for big movies or like for movie trailers, and I'd seen the menu, like I watched it all the way through so that I knew what footage to use and where, I'd be like, this needs to be edited perfectly. Like it needs to appeal to everybody. I need to make sure that everyone, you know, comes and sees this movie because it deserves the views. Yeah,
it really does. I'd easily put this film in my like top 10 of the last like maybe even 2 decades, maybe. This is a really good movie, and I will enjoy it for many years to come. Hopefully, like I can always look back on it. But anyway, back to the courses. So I kind of covered the amuse-bouche earlier, right? Which is like the one that represents the eventual ending where they burn everything, and no one picks up on it. So we can skip over that to the third dish, which is actually one more thing to say about the amuse-bouche. So an amuse-bouche traditionally isn't something you order. It's something that you get. Really, the chef just gives it to you. It's the chef's decision. So the fact that the chef's decision is a big like, hey, look, you're going to burn, and no one picks up on it, is kind of funny. Yeah, then we get to the island, which is the third dish, which is a kind of seafood dish that's made using ingredients just from the island. So it's I'm trying to remember exactly what's on it, right? It's basically just like this rocky kind of edifice with like seaweed and fish draped over it. And it's very like sculpted. And this is actually a general through line of all the main dishes except for the cheeseburger, is that everything we see is very like artistically beautiful, but unappealing to look at from I don't look at this food and go, that looks delicious. I look at this food and go, it looks very pretty. This
course is like, I mean, there's just a giant fucking rock on a plate, basically, with some different vegetation from the island like thrown about it, and I'm like, I wouldn't fucking eat that if you paid me. What are you even
and the fact that all the pieces of the menu that Slovak brings out are incredibly cold and obsessive and dispassionate, which is something obviously that's thematically relevant to Slovak's character. But also, we get a list of ingredients. Like the film takes the time to like show us like a menu card for each one, where it lists like the components of the dish. And in other words, the film deconstructs what should be a holistic experience and just goes, it is this sequence of mechanical items. And again, there's a theme there, because when we get the cheeseburger being made, we don't get that. What we get is just a really well-made cheeseburger as the only notation, because it's not a cold, removed piece of art. And that doesn't have any true meaning. It's a holistic experience where being food is integral to the artistry of what it is, and so it's just one big nice experience. It's what Slovak says, right? Like it's the thing your mum bought you because your parents were too poor to get the better ones, and you loved it all the more because of that. Like it's just everything about it evokes that Homelander meme. It was perfect. That's my minute detail.
Before we go any further, I'm going to just go ahead and highlight this super chat. Another one from Sam Montgomery, £2. He says, "Saw this pretentious film. Go see The Flash." Yeah, that's our recommendation. Go see The Flash. Fuck this movie.
No, honestly, here's my recommendation. Like, don't pay money for The Flash, but when The Flash comes out, or if you can pirate it, right? Like, I would be intrigued. Watch The Flash and then this movie back to back.
Oh God.
I think, like, particularly if you watch The Flash first, this movie would be so fucking cathartic to watch.
I mean, I mean, I feel like as much as this movie is great, I feel like that would be unfair almost. Like you've just shown me absolute asinine bullshit, and then you showed me the menu. So like by comparison, it's even better than I already would have perceived it to be, right? And now I'm not
You
sure
know,
if I actually just like the movie because it's great or because it's not the Flash.
yeah, anything looks better compared to the Flash. Oh, you know what they should do, right? Rather than call it the Flash, like you know how we have like the Tyler's bullshit course. Want the Flash to be like Machete's bullshit?
Is it Machete or Muschietti? Like
I don't
Muschietti.
know, whichever one, right? Machete's bullshit then.
Yeah.
So Warner Brothers bullshit, Ezra Miller's bullshit.
So when we get to Tyler's bullshit, I want to read out like exactly what the description is for it because it's fucking great.
Oh, it's really funny. Yeah, so then we get our breadless bread plate.
Yes.
Oh, actually, sorry. Before we do the breadless bread plate, the theme of the island, because like Slovak introduces all the meals with like a little speech.
Yeah.
And the one he gets to the island is like this, like, oh, it's ingredients from the island to show how nature goes on even when we're not here. That we are but fleeting moments. Which, when you think about it, it's just a very artistically dressed up way of saying no one's going to miss you when you're gone.
Yes. I actually wrote the entire speech down if you want me to just read it out.
Actually, yeah, honestly, if I go through the dishes as kind of like as a foodie, and then you can give the themes, that would be great.
Sure. He says, now here's what you must remember about this dish. We, the people on this island, are not important. The island and the nutrients it provides exist in their most perfect state without us gathering them or manipulating them or digesting them. What happens inside this room is meaningless compared to what happens outside in nature, in the soil, in the water, in the air. We are but a frightened nanosecond. Nature is timeless. Enjoy.
Yeah, it's just like no one's gonna miss you.
Did I already mention that like Slowick has like the best fucking dialogue in the movie?
And Ray Fiennes delivers it just so perfectly as well.
Of course he does, because he's Ray Fiennes.
Yeah, there are, to be fair and to be fairly critical, like to pull a Lillian and be like, "Oh, this shouldn't be here in a film of this caliber." There's a couple of times where his accent slips, but I think the film is so good that I don't know whether that's deliberate or not.
I think it probably
could be. Yeah, I think it might be. I think it's him again, like playing up the conflicting details thing, because whenever he needs to be in action.
Sorry, you're cutting out for me. What?
For a motive scene, that's not when it cracks. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, I think it is. I think you're right. I think it is intentional.
Okay, cool. I hear you now. It could
Can
be
you?
that you're using your phone for your microphone, right? Is it like almost dead?
Yeah. Okay. What I'll do is I'll quickly jump to the laptop. You may hear a slightly worse sound quality, so I apologize.
That's all right. Yeah, he was supposed to get a microphone before this stream, but he didn't. The motherfucker. So now it's just us for the next few minutes. How are we all doing? I've not actually seen Nope. I've been told it's great, and I do intend to watch it. It's just there are a lot of movies that came out in 2022 that I did not get around to in 2022. The Menu was one of them. It was one of the many that I hadn't gotten a chance to see. And a few months ago, I was like, I'm going to fucking watch these movies that I didn't watch last year. Around the same time, I watched Banshees of Inisherin. I watched The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. I was going to watch Triangle of Sadness and After Sun, but I still haven't seen those either. You guys see what I'm talking? I mean, this is why we're doing this stream, so we can talk about something good. Because like every time I want to watch something like that's great from last year, what I end up doing instead is like, I gotta fucking watch The Mandalorian so I can talk about that on stream. And it's like, it's fun to break down shit, but like, it's still shit, right? At the end of the day, like it's not doing anything for me other than being shit. Whereas I watched The Menu twice now, and like you guys have already seen throughout this stream, there are so many details that I just didn't notice, that I didn't pick up on, that Jolly's been pointing out to me. It's so fucking rich, and you guys all need to watch it. All the worse after seeing The Flash. Saw it for free, thankfully. Can't believe I'm gonna say this, but I miss Snyder. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like I'm gonna watch The Flash. I'm gonna pirate it, and it's gonna be some like shitty cam copy. Um, yeah, I'm not even looking forward to that. I'm only really doing it out of morbid curiosity. Hey, Jolly.
Hey, man.
Your audio doesn't sound any worse, really.
I do have it's weird. I have like an echo on your end where like I hear you repeating yourself.
Uh-oh. That's maybe work that out while I read the super chat. From Daredevil or from Emperor Articulates, whatever we're calling you. 110 yen, I believe, is what this symbol is. Lore, Sheev stole my kidneys and pushed my grandma, then slapped my crush, then threw his cat on me and unplugged my PS4 and spread communist propaganda. Kind of a mouthful.
Ah, there we go. I think I have solved it.
Good. While you were gone, I was talking about just a few different things. Someone asked if what my thoughts were on Nope, but I haven't seen that. Have you seen Nope?
Yeah, I have seen Nope.
Do you like it?
The thing is, I have this feeling with a lot of Jordan Peele's work, right? Where like, I think people are much more charitable to it than it deserves. I think it's a good film. Don't get me wrong. I think Nope is a good film. I think Get Out is a good film. I think they are both heavily flawed. The one thing I will say is I haven't had a chance to revisit Nope. I only watched it the one time, and so I would need to go back and like properly, because again, it's a very dense movie where Jordan Peele is a very gifted filmmaker trying to do some complicated theme work. I would need to go back and revisit it and give it like proper attention. Stopping it and taking notes and doing research into the filmmaking and stuff like that to really give it my full time. I will say it's worth watching. I think it's worth watching if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't, and I do intend to eventually. So it's good.
I will say I didn't like Us. I thought Us was really bad.
I have not seen Us. I have seen Get Out, but that was years ago. I don't remember it like at all.
I like a lot of things about Get Out. I think there's some bits where it's not very plot tight, but I am not EFAP. As long as it's tight enough that I can understand what you're going for, I'm going to evaluate the whole film holistically for its quality, not just be like, oh, well, this thing doesn't make complete logical sense. Yeah, I like Get Out. It's a solidly good film. It's certainly one of the most original horror films I've seen for a while. I mean, God knows we need more original horrors.
Do they think Get Out is bad? EFAP, I mean.
I think they think it's below average, yeah.
Well, on that note, what are your thoughts on Interstellar?
Oh, Interstellar shit. It's really bad.
I was gonna say, I get it. I get where you're coming from, but Interstellar is so fucking broken.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Because the standard that you and I think both use is consistency is a means to an end, right? So like there are two bars for consistency. There's like the minimum bar that you have to have, where your film is internally consistent enough that I can understand what you're trying to say. If you fail that, I don't care how pretty everything else is, it's ultimately in service to meaninglessness, and the film is bad. But above that bar, the more consistent you are, the higher your film could potentially be in terms of quality. You still need to pay off that consistency with like good storytelling, but like you're raising the bar of what's possible. The more consistent you become beyond that point. But yeah, I'm not a favor of the brand of criticism that goes, I can spot one or two inconsistencies, therefore plot makes no sense, therefore I don't like.
I know a certain person in our film criticism sphere rather, whose name I will not name. Who reminds me of that quite well. So
Yes,
I know.
Yes.
I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. We will mention no names. Partly because I just don't want to start drama with people. That's not why we do this.
Yeah.
But also partly because I just don't think they deserve the airtime.
Also, Emperor Articulates Interstellar is not peak cinema, but I would expect you of all people to think it is, since you think Harry Potter is good.
Oh, Harry Potter is so bad. To be fair to Interstellar, just while we're on the segue, I will give it two things, right? The first thing is I think it builds up, and this is like a product of how good the soundtrack and the cinematography is and the directing. It builds up tension really well. Like I remember in the cinema being on like the fucking edge of my seat the whole way through, like so tense.
Well, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot about Interstellar that's worth praising, just beyond like the music and the visuals and things of that nature. I like
I was
the
about to say,
characters, and I think that there are a lot of great emotional beats. I just think they're severely undermined by a completely nonsensical story.
yeah, with the exception of Anne Hathaway's character, who was absolutely awful. I kind of like how the film draws attention to, and like, you know, she's like a highly trained scientist, but because she's the woman, the film has her do the whole like love transcends space and time bullshit. And like Matthew McConaughey's character just like looks at her like she's completely insane. Which I did appreciate. But yeah, then she turns out to be right because the Tesseract is a fad now.
The fucking Tesseract,
Yeah,
my god.
really bad. He falls into a black hole and survives. No. That actually, the last thing I'll praise about this movie is the black hole itself. So the film had Kip Thorne, who is a very well-renowned black hole physicist, on its team to kind of tell them how it would look, because scientists aren't terribly interested in the visuals of things beyond the mathematics, and so no one had ever stopped to really think about what a black hole would actually physically look like once you modeled it would be. And so Kip Thorne did all the math for the computer generation of the black hole, Gargantua, in the movie. And that was the first accurately rendered black hole, as they are in real life, which was then confirmed by photos we managed to take of them, Bill NASA managed to take of them, like 2 or 3 years later. But it's really cool, because like he wrote loads of academic articles off the back of the work he did for this movie, being like, this is what a black hole would actually look like, because of the way it bends light. And so I remember seeing that thing in cinemas and just being blown away by how fucking magnificent that visual was. And being like, man, I really hope they look like that. And they do look like that. So I'm super happy.
That's great. You're living up to the name Jolly Chap, aren't you?
Yeah, this is what, again, when we talk about things that are good, I get to be jolly. And this is my natural state, Sheev. You know this when I like go on 3 a.m. rants about random topics to you. Like, I love talking about interesting things. I am very much a teacher at heart. Like, I like to talk about things that are interesting and fascinating and talk about the artistic connections between various scientific fields or cool bits of history or what that tells us about human nature. Like, can we please just do more of this?
Sam Montgomery, thank you for the super chat, first of all. Do we want to like go fucking rank Nolan movies right now? I mean, we've already kind of gone off on a tangent. What I will say is that Nolan is massively overrated. He makes a lot of pretty bad films, and typically they're very conceptual, but he's not. I don't even want to say this, but like it does come across like he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
I think the problem is, and like a lot of his early films, the good films, they're collaborations between himself and his brother. His brother's the one doing most of the screenwriting. And his brother is of the pair of them, because again, like I'm not going to sit here and be like, Nolan can't write, therefore Nolan is a bad artist, because again, that's not how that works. Nolan is a phenomenally talented, he's a phenomenally talented director. What he isn't though is a writer. It's kind of like Rian Johnson, right? Rian Johnson is a phenomenally talented visual director. He's very bad, and he's very good at getting performances out of people, but he's very bad at writing. And like Jonathan Nolan, who was the writer, did a lot of the good work. So Nolan is very hit and miss in this way, right? Like, so a lot of his early films are fantastic. So like Memento is fairly solid. It's got its problems, but it's pretty good. But then you have things like The Prestige, which is one of the greatest films of all time, and Inception, which bar 1 or 2 slight plot, bits of iffiness, is one of the best movies I've ever seen as well. So he can do it. When he and his brother, again, like Jonathan Nolan wrote season 1 and 2 of Westworld, and season 1 of Westworld is the best season of television I've ever seen in my life. So they can do it. They just need to be working as a team.
Yeah, they would be an unstoppable force, honestly. If they made Westworld season 1, then I like them together. I trust them completely.
Oh yeah. Well, I think J.J. Abrams was also involved in Westworld season 1, which is kind of funny, right? This is what happens when J.J. Abrams isn't making the script, or doesn't have any input on the script. Again, a lot of because the thing is, like, at that level, right? And we criticize the culture of art, and the menu is all about criticizing culture of art. But in the same way that like Slowick is an obsessive chef, right? Like he's extremely talented. What he lacks is the passion because of what the culture has done to him. I see that with a lot of directors in Hollywood, right? Like there are a lot of very, very talented directors who either step well beyond the wheelhouse of directing and then fall flat, or who have come to just kind of sit on their laurels, like Michael Bay, where they know they're talented and they don't really do anything with it. But they are talented, and when that talent is put to proper use, they make phenomenal work.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the menu. Yeah. So the last course we talked about was The Island. Was there anything more you wanted to say on that, or do you want to move to the next one?
Yes, The Island is a great Michael Bay film. Watch that too. Well, it's fun. I wouldn't call it great, but yeah, the next course is the breadless bread plate.
Ah, yes. So I found this
Um,
one interesting, and actually, I think I might have written down Slowick speech for this one too.
do you want me to? I'll do the thematic stuff, and then you do the sorry, not thematic. I'll do the dish stuff, then and you do
Yes.
the themes. So the dish stuff is that Slowick comes out and he's like, bread is the food of the poor, and it's the working man, the everyman. But you are not the everyman. You are a different kind of audience. So you get no bread for you. And they bring out this white plate, which is like is designed to like emphasize the emptiness of the plate, right? Like it's fucking huge, with these tiny little dimples at the edges where like there are tiny dots of like various different dipping sauces of where the bread would normally be used for. And most of the people in the room are like, "What the fuck? Where's my bread?" And except for Tyler, Tyler's like, "Oh, this is genius! It's genius!" And Margot's like, "What are you talking about? He basically just fucking insulted you." And he's like, "No, you don't get it. You don't get it." And she's like, "No." She's like, "I know what a theme is, Tyler. I fucking get it. You're just being insulted." And Lillian, the critic, is like, "Oh, this is genius. This is brilliant. It's artistically avant-garde." However, puts on glasses. This emulsion, this bit at the end. Again, for those who don't know, an emulsion is a mixture between two liquids that don't normally mix. So like oil and water, they're not soluble with each other, so they just sort of clump around each other. And what you normally have with an emulsion in restaurants is they'll add an emulsifying agent that makes the droplets of the two different liquids so fine that it looks like one liquid. She looks at the emulsion on the plate and it's like, oh, it's split, which means it's separated out again. And you really shouldn't see that in a restaurant of this quality. Now, there was a through line with this emulsion, which I will get to, but I will let you talk about the theme first, Sheev.
So he says, this is the great speech of Chef Slowick. Bread has existed in some form for over 12,000 years, especially amongst the poor. Flour and water. What could be simpler? Even today, grain represents 65% of all agriculture. Fruits and vegetables, only 6%. Ancient Greek peasants dipped their stale, measly bread in wine for breakfast. And how did Jesus teach us to pray, if not to beg for our daily bread? It is, and has always been, the food of the common man. But you, my dear guests, are not the common man. So tonight, you get no bread. Which is obviously to the outrage of the guests because they want... I mean, I think Felicity is the one who mentions that, like, this restaurant is basically known for their bread. And so it's almost like it's an insult that they're not getting any.
Yeah. Well, they don't view it as an insult, right? They just view it as like being robbed in some sense. Like, oh, why am I not getting the thing I want?
Yeah.
It's Margot. Margot's the one who points out they're being insulted.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. This is especially like we already kind of touched on this with the business douches who are like, hey, we work with. So one thing that's worth saying is like they say we work with Varric, and then Elsa, the waitress, the great waitress, like instantly corrects them as like for Varric, and they're like, yeah, so basically we own this place. So like give us bread. And it's just a fucking great scene because she's just not taking their shit, and then she says that great line that I already mentioned. It's just I like the breadless bread plate. It's fucking great.
Yeah. Also, Elsa is a source of endless comedy. Like she, in the next course as well. But the like just the kind of quiet like these are tortillas. Like just the no and like give us more bread, and she's like no, you get no bread for you. It's a bit like we haven't mentioned him, but one of the staff is the sommelier, is the guy who gives the wine courses the wine in between courses and during courses. And if you notice, as the kind of menu goes on, the language he uses to describe the wines gets increasingly more ridiculous and stupid because he knows they're not paying attention. And so it's designed to take the piss. So like it starts off with like, oh, this wine's like a 40-year-old Chateau Degree. It's floral notes with a vanilla overtone, which is like a kind of standard thing you'd hear, right, from a pretentious sommelier. But as it goes on, he's like, oh, this red is like 400 years old and with tones of regret and mischief and longing. Like, what the
fuck? Oh, yet another super chat from our boy. Sheev is a very good grifter, but he is a bad person. Correct. Thank you.
Correct. This is true. We need a CW live action spin-off of Sheev.
Yes.
Actually, I would say that, but I think the Flash destroyed your multiverse. So.
Oh fuck, that's right. Okay.
No CW spin-off for you.
I was gonna say, just imagine like a Breaking Bad story, but it's about Sheev becoming a grifter.
I've just realised something. That means that Oliver Queen from the Arrowverse is canonically the god of the DCEU.
Yeah. Well, not to get completely off topic, but do you want to know? You've seen my Flash season 9 video? Right?
I've seen your take. I've nenever heard like that is the closest you've ever gotten to Slowik's like I'm gonna kill everyone stage. It was so pathetic.
So annoyed. I've had people point out that like apparently in the comics, the Spectre, which is who Oliver like becomes at the end of Crisis, is like the wrath of God or whatever. He like works for God, and I'm like, cool. That's not in the shows, so I don't know why you guys keep using that as a defense.
But yeah, in the show, he is basically God. And this is a show that's also got Lucifer in it, so I don't know how that all ties together, but fuck it.
But Lucifer's in a different universe, and like God exists in that show, but like there's no connection between that God and Oliver Queen Spectre. So like I don't accept that.
Spectre outranks him. Spectre controls the multiverse, and he's just the god of one universe.
Yeah, well, but apparently God... I don't know. That's the thing is like you brought Lucifer into this Arrowverse for some fucking reason. So now I have to wonder, did this God character create the entire multiverse or just Lucifer's universe?
Oh, it's way more worse. It's way worse than that because the Sandman is the same universe, the same multiverse as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck's going on. But yeah, anyway, back to Elsa and the breadless bread plates. Shall I do the emulsion through line? Because that's quite interesting. Because that was kind of cut. Well, it's in the film, but the ending of it was cut. Again, I think for studio interference. So the idea originally was that the breaking of the emulsion was deliberate. That the reason Lillian is served a broken emulsion is so that essentially can be rubbed in her face that she is a shitty critic who hyper focuses on minute, irrelevant details to crush people who are actually making good art, to prop up her own reputation as the kind of person who's a bull crusher. And like as the because she complains loudly, and Slowik we see is listening. He's looking at her, and then Elsa then brings her a big bowl, a huge fucking comically sized bowl of this broken emulsion. And she's like, "Oh, this is directly from Chef Slowik," and like she looks up at him and he like nods at her sarcastically, and she doesn't know how to take it, so she's like, "Oh, thanks." But this was that's the last we hear of it in the film, where it's just kind of used as a fuck you. Well, the original ending.
They do that one more time, like a bigger bowl, and it's like,
almost like a barrel, like a swimming tub of it.
And this is after it's revealed that they're all like gonna die, and so she's like terrified for her life, and then they just bring out this giant fucking barrel of emulsion, basically, and put it on, and she's just like, this film as a dark comedy is so absolutely excellent. But like, the original ending was that when Margot was out of the room, when Margot was sent by Slowik to just before the pudding course to go and to fetch an ingredient, which we need to talk about at some point because there's a question mark as to whether or not he actually told Elsa and she forgot or not. Well, she says that he didn't, and I think I believe her. I think he just kind of made this up to give her a reason to leave. Not to try to escape, but to just try to make her one of them, essentially, like give her a job so that she's. Oh,
okay. And then Elsa's obsessiveness, because again, Elsa's name is thematic as well. Like Elsa means like the oath of God or the promise to God, like essentially sworn to God, where Slowik is God, because she is fanatically even of the fanatical stuff, she is the most fanatical.
Yeah.
So maybe she that's her. She accidentally gets her own comeuppance in the form of like her paranoia about being replaced gets her killed.
Yeah.
But actually, there is like a moment of that's the one criticism I have of Margot's character. There is an idiot ball moment where she finds a knife and then she puts it down and walks away. And Elsa then picks up the knife. I'm like, come on! I don't believe she would have put.
Yeah. No.
She gets to kill Elsa with a Paco jet, which is kind of funny. But yeah, so. Getting back to breadless bread plate and the emulsion, the through line was going to be that whilst Margot was out of the room, they were going to waterboard Lillian in the emulsion, and this scene was clearly filmed because at the end Lillian's hair is wet when none of the other characters have wet hair or any reason to have wet hair. So the scene was clearly filmed. It clearly happened in the continuity, but we just don't get to see it for some reason. And from what I've heard from doing my research on the background of this film, it seems like the studio asked for it to be taken out because they thought it would bump the age rating.
It is really
annoying.
It's pretty annoying that a film that directly spits in the face of a lot of different aspects of the death of art, but one specifically being like studio interference, was slightly muddled by studio interference. Like that really does upset me.
Yeah, I guess you could kind of claim it as a kind of jokey, meta-thematic moment, right? Of like even the film that is decrying the bastardization of art cannot escape the bastardization of art. It's kind of, there is like an ironic, like it's annoying because it's to the detriment of the film, I think, not in a huge way, but like it's a nice point that we don't get.
Yeah.
A bit like the head behind the door, right? Which we don't need, but like would have been a nice little detail. This is the studio fucking up a film because they don't understand it. Where the film is talking about people bastardizing art because they don't understand it, and whilst it's like on a meta level, that's kind of funny. It's irritating to behold.
I do think, since we're talking about Lillian, something that we haven't made entirely clear, you kind of briefly mentioned this. She is the critic that basically gave a name to Slowick. She like was the one to first discover him when he was still working at Tantalus. So like I think in a way, he also hates himself. Like we've already gone over, like he hates himself and thinks he deserves to die because he has in a lot of ways like cultivated this culture that he hates. And sees himself as a dark reflection. But like, I mean, that couldn't be made more clear than the fact that like somebody that he's invited here to die because he hates her and what she's done to so many people's livelihoods. This person gave him basically the career that he has now.
Yeah.
So he sees himself as part of the problem in that sense as well. And in that of all the people, of all the chefs and all the restaurants that she's shut down by the stroke of her pen, he's the one who got to continue going and continue building his empire.
Yeah. There's also, again, this is less important to the film. I don't think we needed this, so I see why this was cut. And I think this was a director's decision to cut, not a studio's decision to cut. But there was going to be a line where she was going to be like, Hawthorne has reopened after 3 years of nothing happening, not just because of COVID, but because Slowick basically tried to run away from it all. And that she tracked him down and like found him working in the Korean taco van and sort of dragged him back into the limelight. Against his will. And so that was going to be like an element of the film. Like, again, I don't think we need it. I don't think it adds anything thematic. I can see why they cut it. But just as a kind of like bit of character background on Lillian's, on this idea that he blames her for dragging him to this position, in as much as he blames himself for being dragged, that would have kind of like added to that. Well, not added to that, but like being a kind of more explicit telling of that.
Yeah. I also like the line where he's like, he's introducing something. He says, which Lillian, which Miss Bloom, I believe, described as, what was it? And she says, putting you on the map. And he's like, yes. On what map that would be, I wonder.
Yeah. He's God, I've never seen such a great portrayal of like just his embittered saltiness. He's going to get a lot of, his clips are going to get a lot of mileage in my video on art criticism.
Yeah.
Just so many.
I've gotten so many reaction clips from the menu just to use generally in my videos going forward.
Yeah, it's great for video editing. Like in terms of like just having moments that you can pull. There's so many that are good. Anyway, so we've described the breadless bread plates. The next course, which Elsa gets to have another funny moment in, which we'll talk about, is the scissor tacos. So it's Slowick comes out. Actually, I'll let you do the speech when we get there. But like, he serves a chicken taco with a pair of knitting scissors or like sewing scissors stabbed into it, and the tortillas themselves are like laser printed to have big fuck yous to each of the guests. Like it's throwing their sins back in their face. So like where the island theme was "No one will miss you," and the breadless bread plate was like "You are all takers. You are not givers. You are takers." The scissors taco thing is like, here is all the ways in which you are abusers. Here's all your sins, and I'm going to stop you, like I stopped my father.
Mm-hmm.
And here is why you are being stopped. And so, yeah, he gives the kind of backstory, which I'll let you do in the speech, where he explains the theme and says it's them, and then he brings them the dishes literally wrapped in their sins. The food they eat that becomes shit in their guts is wrapped in their own misdeeds and horrible crimes.
Yep.
And yeah, we get to have the funny moment where the finance bros have, because their thing is like they see like all their misdeeds or all their like financial crimes printed in like the form of their accounts on the tortillas, and they're like, what the fuck? And actually they even start discussing whether like it's legally like permissible as evidence in court, like that he has these, and like
Well, they
They're
try to
they go to
rationalize
Elsa.
it too. They're like, well, yeah, but like if we go down, like Varric goes down, and that's bad for them, so they can't use this, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really like even when they're being confronted with their sins, their first thing they think of is their own backside, not like the weight of what they've done or the
Yeah.
thing itself. They're still all about me, and it's kind of like they go to Elsa and they're like, "What the fuck is this?" And they're holding up the wrap, and she's like, "These are tortillas." They're like, "But how did you get these?" And like, "These are tortillas."
She kind of like breaks character too, and then and like she like drops her friendly face, and she's like, tortillas that have the this proving like tax fraud in your company. Blah, blah. It's just like it's just a really funny.
She's so comically brilliant in this film. But yeah, like the list of sins, right, is like Tyler gets a because early in the meal, and this is so funny. Despite the fact he knew they were all going to die, he's been taking photos of the meal. Despite the fact that's also explicitly forbidden in this restaurant, and like of course they noticed him, and so they show him a photo of him taking a photo of the meal, which he just interprets again because all the characters interpret it in like very in character ways, right? He just interprets it as like, oh, Chef is angry with me for letting the culture down, for not adhering to the culture. Whereas what Chef's actually saying is like, you're a fucking asshole who does this. Like, this is how you view art through the lens of your fucking camera phone. You pretentious dick. The rich couple, they have a photo of Richard at the restaurant with Margot as when she was his client. The critics gets given a list of restaurants that she's shut down unfairly. And
Diaz gets a tortilla that just has an image of Calling Dr. Sunshine like poster.
Oh yeah,
and he's like, oh man, this thing, okay.
Yeah, I think he takes it in like good faith, right?
But yeah, he does because oh yeah, this movie it wasn't great. It was not my best work. And like we at the time that this happens, like we don't know that this is like the reason that he's actually like this, like Slowick is motivated to kill him because this movie that he did was so bad. We just think, oh wow, he being made fun of for like a movie that he did, I guess, that because like we already have this impression of him as like a sort of a washed up has-been who doesn't really get a lot of recognition these days and doesn't really do a lot for his own career. He's just sort of phoning it in.
Whose assistant is stealing from him, and he's blackballing her attempts to get a new job by giving her bad recommendations.
Yeah, they were a very interesting pair in the film because like for a little bit I was just like, why are they here? Like what are they adding to this? And then like by the time it's revealed why Slowick has brought them here, it's like really.
Yeah, they were like, don't get me wrong, there is a severe element of pettiness to everything Slowick. But again, Slowick is the villain. You're not meant to root for him. Like what he's doing is artistic, but it's still evil.
I mean, I rooted for him, but only because I'm also cynical. So
well, I rooted for him because I'm on a meta level of like I understand what the film is trying to say, and I sympathize with that message. But like, yeah, particularly with George, and I think this is just the actor giving such a good performance as well. Like he's very sympathetic. Like he tries to save Felicity. He does, to be fair. Like. Yeah, he's not a bad person. He's been a bit of a little shit to her because he thinks he's going to leave him, and like he's a bit like of a man-child, but he's not a bad human.
Like, and I mean, like, I wouldn't even if I was cynical toward like the death of my art to the point that I would go to these extreme homicidal lengths. I don't know that like I could really blame an actor for being in a bad movie. Like, I don't hate Charles Dance just because he's in Dracula Untold.
Yeah, and I mean, like Margot kind of points out this, right? Because like with George especially, right, the hypocrisy is most blatant because Slowick's beef with him is like you have sold out to a rich elite who don't understand art, so you've become apathetic and you stopped caring about your art. And Margot's point is like, well, that's kind of what you've done as well. You've just replaced it with obsession. Like you're still catering to the whims of these people, even in your dying moments, even as a final art piece. Ultimately, you're doing it for them as an audience. They're the audience. Like. There is a kind of inherent hypocrisy there, which Slowick is sort of aware of, but not quite to the extent that Margot becomes aware of it and points out to him. So yeah, I think it's more just like George. The pettiness of George is more because like Slowick sees more of himself in George than he does in the others. So George is more just like a hate sponge for his own self-hatred, like a projection of his own self-hatred. Even though like George is also a sellout, like he is just, and Felicity is a nepo baby. Like that is fundamentally who they are as people as well.
Yeah. Do you want me to read off his speech now?
Yeah, yes, go for it.
So he introduces the course. He says, the next course is called memory. That's what it's meant to evoke, a memory. Let me tell you one of mine. When I was a child growing up in Waterloo, Iowa, Tuesday was taco night. Taco Tuesday. Then he points to his mom over in the corner. This is my mother. As you can see, she's rather drunk. This is not unusual. When I was 7 years old, one Tuesday, my father came home quite drunk. Also not unusual. Mother grew angry and screamed at him, at which point he proceeded to wrap a telephone cord around her neck and pull it tight. I wept and screamed and begged him to stop. To make him stop, I finally had to stab him in the thigh with kitchen scissors. You remember that, Mother, don't you? And then she sort of like reacts vaguely, but continues drinking. My favorite line from the speech is when he's talking about where is it? Oh, I don't think it's in the script. Maybe he ad-libbed this, but like to the point that you said about how he is punishing them for their abuse, which ultimately is going to result in him killing them. He says, "I should have stabbed him in the throat that night, but we're not so smart when we're children."
Yeah, it's
I really fucking like that line.
I think the Taco Tuesday thing was also a bit of improv. From what I understand of the filming, the director gave them like, here's the script to take, and then I gave you a take to like improvise whatever you want to each of the actors. And like this was, I think Ray Fiennes improvised the Taco Tuesday thing. So like, yeah, there's a lot of good little moments like that throughout the movie. It's like Margot punching Tyler when she gets the reveal that he let her there to die. The original script was that she just starts screaming at him, but like Anya Taylor-Joy was like, no, I'd fucking belt the guy. so she did, and apparently they didn't tell Nicholas Hoult this was happening, so she just launched herself over the table and like fucking clocks him. And poor Nicholas Hoult, it's like, no.
That's great. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be content to just sit there and yell at him. I'd be fucking beating the shit out of him.
Well, yeah, and also because it's we touched on the as a kind of tertiary theme that this film is like poking a stick at misogyny and the kind of misogyny behind auteurship. Anya's rationale for the punch was like she was very unhappy with how female anger is generally portrayed in films. Well, she's like, I don't, the fact that I'm a woman doesn't matter. Like, if this guy did this to me, I'd fucking kick him in the fucking face. So I'm like, yeah, I love her as an actor. She's brilliant.
I think I'd seen her in other things, but like I think this is the movie that made me actually like start really loving her.
Yeah, she's not just as an actress, right? Like as a person as well. Like the fact that she turned up to the Mario premiere in a giant custom-made Princess Peach driving suit. Or like, there's an interview which is like the moment where like, I think I'm in love with you. She was like, I think it's like Graham Norton, and she's like the Graham Norton show, and she's like talking about like a lockdown Christmas Eve, or like a lockdown New Year's Eve, and what she was doing. And she, Graham was like, "Oh, were you celebrating?" And like, "No, I was watching the Lord of the Rings extended editions all the way through." It's like, what a fucking legend this woman is.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's great. And so, I mean, everyone in this film is great, to be fair, but Nicholas Hoult, her, and Ray Fiennes in particular are just fantastic.
They are the standouts, yeah.
Now we are at the mess. We are at Jeremy's mess. The bit where the whole film turns. So, yeah, Jeremy, we said this earlier, right? Jeremy's the sous chef, and he gets brought out, and Slovak, like, while he's being walked out, the chefs are, like, drawing transparent curtains over the kitchen area, and they put, like, a tarpaulin down, which Jeremy's standing on, and they're like, what the fuck's going on? And Slovak's like, the next course is designed by my sous chef, Jeremy. And it's called it's his mess, Jeremy's mess. And then he kind of does this kind of break the cutie, break the haughty moment, right? Where he's like, Jeremy is a very talented chef. He wants to be me. He'll never be me because he's not. He'll never be as good as me. He wants my life. He wants my career. He'll never have it. And like, before you get the kind of ending themes of the film, it just kind of sounds like Slovak is being like a dick, right? It's like, oh, you're just shit compared to me. Whereas what's actually happening in Slovak is like, Jeremy doesn't get it. Jeremy, he puts in all this work. He's given me all his devotion, all his time, all his lifeblood for a goal he doesn't understand. He doesn't look at my life and really understand how shit it is. Like, he's pursuing something that's hollow, and he needs to be taught the error of that.
Yeah. One thing I really like, just a quick moment, is like, because because things are starting to escalate to the point where like the guests are taking notice. Like before this moment, where like it really snaps and changes, and like because the business douches had their tortillas like etched with like evidence of tax fraud in their company, they're pretty upset. So when Slowick comes out to like present this course, he starts talking, and then like one of them stands up and he's like, "Excuse me, I'd like to know what the hell is going on here." And he's like, "Well, if you just let me finish," like acting off, like acting,
like, dude, you're ruining the art.
Yeah, like as if these people are like acting out of turn or like doing something wrong when like they very rightfully want to know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah,
I just like that part.
There's also the thing before we get to the big moment, the dramatic moment. The food itself is pressure cooked. The vegetables are pressure cooked, and so is the meat. And like there's a kind of like very on the nose metaphor there of like the dish representing the pressure that these chefs are put under, or the artists are put under.
Pressure to put out the best food in the world.
This insane, the pressure to please people who will never be pleased, who are incapable of being pleased. It's a very this is another kind of visual fuck you. And then we get the moment where Jeremy pulls the trigger. And like, Jeremy puts a gun in his mouth. He puts and again, like, because I want to address every silly criticism I've seen as I go, right? One of the criticisms I've seen, not from EFAP, thank God, but from similar-esque kinds of critics, was, this is a plot problem, because like he could easily have like shot through his mouth and like straight into like one of the chefs behind him. So like they're all idiots. And I'm like, well, first of all, no, because the
guy anyway. So like, first of all, like, I don't...
yeah, and they're all standing. And if you notice as well, when they put on the curtains, they all go and stand in particular places. They know where the bullet trajectory is going to be.
Mm-hmm. They've planned this, guys. Like this has been in the works.
Yeah, and they are meticulous. And also, like the other thing is like Jeremy's gun is angled upwards, so it's going to go into the ceiling. The bullet's going to go into the ceiling. The curtains are drawn more to stop the other chefs from being splattered with blood as they work.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeremy blows his brains out, and the room goes nuts, and everyone's like, "What the fuck?" And like the staff just carry on. They don't mention it. They just carry on. They remove the body. Everyone's calm except for the guests. And so there's this kind of, like I said earlier, this Milgram experiment-esque thing where like Lillian is so convinced of this culture of performativity that she's like, "Oh no, don't be silly. Of course it's not real." And because she's the grand critic, they all kind of just nod along and go with it. And like they're still like the actor in particular is like, "I don't know, man. That looks kind of real to me." But they all sit back down. They all just go along with it.
I like that part where because she's like, "Oh, the theater is exquisite," and Diaz is like, "The fuck are you talking about?"
Yeah. Also, I like how it's the actor who points out that she's bullshitting when she's like, "It's the theater."
Mm-hmm.
I like all the touches are so nice. All the character work is so good. Imagine, Sheev, the world in which just 1/15th, 1/50th, 1/100th of this effort had been put into Kenobi or the Mandalorian.
Don't make me long for something that I can't ever have. Don't give me hope.
Don't give me hope. Yeah, and so that's the mess dish. And like at this point, like Margot is now well aware, like because she's the one seeing with clear eyes. She is damn well aware of what the fuck has just happened. I can't remember. Is this the point where she gets pulled up by Chef to the kitchen?
Fuck. Let me look at my notes because I know I did go through this chronologically. So, Richard and Anne attempt to leave. It's right after Richard tries to leave and gets his finger cut off, I think.
Which one was that? That's after the mess, right?
Yeah, it's right after the mess.
Yeah, so like the mess happens, Richard tries to leave, gets his finger cut off. Lillian is still insisting that it's theater. Like she thinks Richard's an actor, because Lillian's a fucking idiot.
I don't think she's an idiot. She's trying to rationalize this. She's like, there's no way that I'm really in this level of danger right now.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like she as a character is not, as an individual, she's not an idiot, right? I'm not criticizing the script or the character work. She's an idiot in as much as like the culture she's so enmeshed in that her brain is so like wrapped around is so utterly silly that it can't recognize reality 2 feet from her face. Like she can't recognize it. So like that's all happening. Richard's like sobbing and begging and crying, and blood is everywhere. Jeremy's dead. Margot's very shaken, as you fucking would be. And Chef is like, Elsa comes and is like, oh, Chef wants to speak to you. And Tyler's like, oh, me? He's like,
Can I
no,
come?
no, not you. Yeah, not you. Sit the fuck down. And then she goes behind into the kitchen, and she's obviously like, she's fucking shocked, and she knows they're all going to die now, basically. And Chef's like, no, you're wrong. You're all wrong. You shouldn't be here. And we get the little scene where she's like, oh, I'm Margot. And he's like, no, you're not. I know a Margot when I see one, and you're not a Margot.
There are many Margos, and you're not one of them.
Yeah, and like, basically, this pays off later with the later scene, but like, the thing he says right now is like, I need to know whether to seat you with the givers or the takers. Like, are you with them or are you with us? And she's like, do I get to live if I'm with you? And she's like, oh no, we all die. And she's like, well, then the choice is arbitrary. And he's like, no,
it's not nothing arbitrary.
Nothing in this kitchen is arbitrary. Which I guess, like, she's being practical. Like, to her, like, whether she dies, on that side or this side doesn't matter. She still dies. And he's like, no, for the art, for the antiquity of the art, it really does matter. Like, it changes completely what I'm trying to say if you're on the wrong side. So like, that's a nice little moment. And then she gets taken back. He gives like 15 minutes to decide, right? He's like, and after the next course, we're going to take a break, and then I'll talk to you in my office. And we come back, and the next course is the palate cleanser, which is the bergamot and red clover tea. Which, again, I can't stress this enough. Slowick and the film both like give us the card and the description. Like, this is bergamot and red clover tea. So thank you, Tyler, for your insightful comment about to happen. Like, Tyler is like, Chef is explaining the themes, and I'll let you do the speech again. But like, Tyler interrupts him to be like, is there, because like, Slowick, is there any questions? And Tyler's like, yes. Is this bergamot I can taste in the tea? And Slowick is just like, so annoyed. I was like, yes, Tyler, it's bergamot. Well done. Like, it is indeed bergamot that you can taste in the bergamot tea.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a kind of meta level, like in terms of like what all the dishes are saying, I think the palate cleanser is like he's reasserting control. He's calming the atmosphere after the two big, like, shocking moments. He's trying to like reassert control over the room with the palate cleanser.
Is that part? That's before he confronts Richard and Anne about having been here 11 times, right?
I think so, yeah.
I'm trying to find it in the script. There's a saying, sometimes all you need is a good cup of tea. I learned that growing up in Bratislava. And then, like,
yeah, and then like Margot's like, what the fuck?
Well, okay, so it says in the script that some guests exchange glances, like, after that, like, as if they're noticing too. That was clearly cut from the film, and I think for good reason, because that would have conflicted with what the message was that they were trying to go for.
The only thing we get like that later is there's a bit later on where he quotes Martin Luther King, and like, he's a white man quoting Martin Luther King to a room full of colored people he's about to kill, and like, George Diaz, who is obviously Hispanic, looks over at the finance bros, who are all people of color, and he's like, did he just quote Martin Luther King? And they're like, yeah, he did.
Says, I found that not only does tea cleanse the palate, but it offers some soothing balm when faced with some hard home truths. So before we continue, are there any questions about me or Hawthorne, or why none of us are getting out of here alive? And then Tyler asks the question.
Is this bergamot? Like, yes, Tyler. It's fucking hell, Tyler.
Anyway. Okay, well, think of yourselves as ingredients in a what does this say? Digestation?
Yeah, digestation.
Yeah, concept. Figuratively speaking, that's the best way to describe it. That's in response to them asking why the fuck this is happening. But none of this should be a surprise to most of you. Miss Bloom, Lillian, if I may, my cherished early advocate, knows the damage she has done to so many livelihoods. She says, no. Now, hold on. You don't talk. I was happy in my little taco truck. I was fine. It was the happiest I've ever been.
Is the taco truck line in the film, or is that just the script? Because I think that's referencing to the cut thing about her finding him in a taco truck.
Yeah, I'm reading the script off right now, so maybe that's not in the film.
I'm pretty sure he mentions Lillian, but I don't think he mentions the truck in the movie, because I think that whole plot line was cut, or like that backstory was cut.
Well, hang on. I'm pretty sure he said something, but I don't know what he said. Let me pull up the actual film.
Oh, in which case, if it's left in, it might be a mistake
Could
in the
be.
film. Even the best films have them, everyone.
Unfortunately. Let's see. That would be about right here. No, he doesn't say anything after you don't talk, because then Ted starts talking, trying to step up to bat for Lillian. So yeah, no, they cut that.
Oh, okay, I take it back. Not every film has a mistake.
This film is literally perfect. It's okay.
Yeah, so we get that, and then the next dish after that is the man's folly dish, which is the one that's drawing attention to the kind of misogyny at play in the kitchen and the art culture, and drawing attention to the kind of like sins of the fathers, right? Like of Sloak becoming like his dad, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. I just decided to put the film on screen just for anyone
who
wants to see
it.
it.
No worries. Look at his expression.
There's
gonna be so many good in reaction memes to be gotten out of this film. But yeah, so the man's folly, which is like we've mentioned how all the men have to run away, and then there's the bonus little like passage egg for Ted when he hides in the chicken coop, which we've kind of talked about thematically already. But in terms of the man's folly dish, there's something really interesting about the ingredients that are used. So all the ingredients used in the dish are things that are usually left out of like a lot of haute cuisine dishes because they're noted for being sour or unattractive looking or difficult to work with as ingredients. And like what's interesting is apply any of those same phrases or sentences to women in the workplace. Like women who are sour or unattractive or difficult to work with. And these are terms often applied to women in a men's workplace, or the view of women who act with any kind of degree of assertiveness or confidence or artistry. It's the way Catherine was treated by Sloak. It's the way Margot was treated by both Richard and Tyler. It's how Anne is treated by Richard. And to a lesser extent, it's kind of how Felicity is talked about by George when they're exchanging barbs, right? This theme is it's a nice little way of using ingredients to represent the theme, right? Of like, this is a dish only the women get to eat. They get to sit at the table. The men have to go outside, and they're eating a dish that represents all the horrible things men say about them behind their backs, or even to their faces. And it is also interspersed with like a nice little moment where the women themselves accidentally parrot some of their own misogyny, right? And that like they assume that the female chef can be talked around because they're like, oh well, clearly she's like cultishly wrapped up in Sloak. This is Sloak. He's the one in charge. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no. The decision to kill you all was my idea. Because once upon a time, Julian, your little compliment about the umeboshi would have meant the world to me. But now I see you for what you are.
Yeah. The fact that she still like starts crying in that scene, like sort of giving the implication that like her recognition does actually mean something to her, if only it had come a little earlier.
It's too little, too late, and not given in the spirit of genuine engagement and good faith. Because like, let's be fair, I think Catherine recognizes they're only doing this to bargain for their lives. Like, the film's quite explicit about it, with like Lillian being like, the umeboshi was delicious, and is it Felicity? Is like, yes, the emoji was great. And then when Catherine's like, no, you're all going to die, that was my idea. And Lillian's like, oh, for fuck's sake, and pulls out a cigarette, which I've mentioned the significance of before. But also, like, this is when Margot is like, I get, my real name is Erin, for anyone who actually gives a fuck, and like grabs a bottle of wine.
Yeah. Of course, we're jumping ahead just a little bit though, because we skipped over Margot and Sloak talking in their office.
Oh shit, yeah. So we have the little discussion in their office where the timer runs out and she goes to his office and she's there too. And this is in the film where we get the reveal that she's an escort. Because Sloak is like, I know a service industry worker when I see one. And we have this nice little conversation where they're talking about like, Sloak is kind of like giving away the theme here, where he's like, oh, do you still enjoy your work? Because I don't enjoy mine anymore. And she gives us the little background on Richard and the clients who make her feel like shit. Now she's like lost enthusiasm for the work she does, where she used to enjoy it. And again, to step outside of just the film criticism for a second, just to applaud the film for something, it's really nice to see a a comic, even if it's a comic horror film, a kind of horror movie where the sex worker isn't being denigrated or shat on, where the sex worker makes it out alive and she's the hero. It's nice to see sex workers not being treated like shit in film, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing to witness.
I do like the line where, because he asks if she enjoys the services that she provides. She says, "I used to. Do you enjoy providing yours? I used to. I haven't desired to cook for someone in ages, and one does miss that feeling."
Yeah, and she takes note because she's paying attention. Is old Margot.
Mm-hmm.
She's a smart cookie, is that girl. Also, like a nice little visual thing that happens with Margot is the film starts off with she's very dressed up, right? She's made to look like this culture because that's her job, right? To be an escort for this culture. So she's got like her hair is immaculately tied back, and she's got this beautiful dress on. As the film goes on, her hair gets looser and looser, and then by the end, when she's like fully standing as her own person, not like being not standing apart from the culture, her hair is completely down. She has figuratively and literally let her hair down and rejoined, who she is, being true to who she is as a person, and not what she has to pretend to be for work.
Good shit.
Yeah, and then what's the dish after Man's Folly? It's your favorite one, Sheev. because Margot gets back and all the men are brought back in, and before the dishes proceed, Slowik takes a break from his own menu. He breaks from his own plan for the night, having talked to Margot and realized that she's been brought here against her will. He's not particularly happy with old Tyler, so he decides to call out Tyler in front of everybody and then arrange a special dish just for Tyler. Yeah, so yeah, it's a Slowik comes off and he's like, so tell everyone what you knew about this evening. And Tyler's like, well, I knew you'd prepared a menu, and I knew I had to bring a guest because you don't serve one person. And Slowik's like, yeah, but tell me what you knew about this evening in our emails that we exchanged for months. And Tyler's like, oh, I knew that everyone was going to die. And Slowik's like, so you brought this woman instead of your date, knowing she'd be killed. And like her expression, like the thing I like, right, is like this is a weird moment where like the chefs and the audience, the people in the restaurant are all united in their fucking hatred for how shitty Tyler is. Like this is the one moment of the film where everyone is just on the same side against Tyler because he's such a bellend. Like even the chefs are like appalled that he would do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what Slowik does is invite him into the kitchen to cook.
Yeah, after he gets belted in the face.
Yeah, I just kind of skipped past that.
Yeah. And then,
puts a little fucking chef's uniform on him.
Well, the thing is, it's really fun. Yeah, it's really funny, right? Because like Tyler at this moment is like, oh, I feel so honored, and I feel, oh, this is so cool. But what they're actually doing is belittling him, right? And to tie back to the cult stuff, this is actually like a very typical technique you get in cult-like environments, including in the army, right? It's like a breaking moment where you publicly humiliate someone to make them fall in line. But in this case, it is also just because they want to genuinely punish this guy for being such a tool. So they crack out the chef's apron and they write on his name like a little kiddie, like a little child with felt tip. Oh, you getting in your big boy pants and pretending to be one of us, you fucking douchebag. And they shuffle him into the kitchen and like, yeah, Slowik's like, now cook, go and cook. And Tyler starts let him cook. And Tyler starts panicking. And he's like grabbing random ingredients, and like I think the chef even jokingly goes like, "Do you need a Paco jet?" At one point,
he does, yeah.
He's making all these like fucking hilarious comments, like so. Tyler's like, "I need lamb and shallots cooked in butter," and the chef's like, "Shallots like, in butter." Yes.
We're
witnessing a revolution.
Yeah, he's gracing us with a new dish that we've never heard of before.
Shallots and butter, truly innovative. Truly, we're witnessing a revolution in cooking. We get to see a new chopping technique of which we were not previously aware.
Yeah.
And yeah, he puts together this dish, and then the film gives it a title card exactly like all the other dishes. Tyler's bullshit.
Lamb, inedible shallow league butter sauce, utter lack of cohesion.
It's so, again, given who Tyler represents in the real world, watching this happen, oh man, I was creaming my pants. I was so happy. It's so nice. It's so nice to see comeuppance.
Mm-hmm. And of course, yeah. So he serves it to Chef, and you get the
He's
reaction clip that people have used to death. Wow, this is actually
terrible.
Quite bad.
Yeah. And then he what does he? You got that written down. What does he say to Tyler?
He says that you are the death of, or you represent the death of my art.
Yeah, and he's like, you've sucked all the mystery out of my art. I think is what he says as well. And like, then he leans down and he whispers, like at this point, like Tyler is like utterly broken, right? He's been humiliated, like he's been publicly shown that he'll never be a part of this world he desperately wants and doesn't even understand it. Like he can talk a good game, he knows all the equipment, but he has no skill, he's got no imagination, he couldn't make this shit to save his life. Mm. He's just mindlessly adhering to a world he's inadequate in has inadequate understanding of. He's just inadequate. That's what he is. He is the inadequate. And so Sloak leans down and he whispers something into Tyler's ear. We don't get to hear what he says, but Tyler is just broken at this point. He takes off his apron and he goes into the back of the restaurant. And the film doesn't show explicitly what happens to him, but it's strongly implied that he kills himself.
Well, we do see Margot look into his office, and there's a guy clearly hanging.
Oh, right, yeah, we do see that later. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
After he gives her a job, basically.
So
right here.
Tyler. Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. Tyler goes and hangs himself.
Then he kills himself.
Kill yourself. That's the only option, Tyler.
The only option, yeah. And he took it to heart.
Yeah. Also, I like, just as a side note, I like the fact that her boots are like much more working person's than the dress she's wearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't match at all.
Yeah, it's like it goes with her black leather jacket from the beginning, right? Like it's a working class like topping on an attempt to be upper class for her job, but she's not really upper class, and nor would she want to be. Yeah, it's just great. I like this stuff. This film. Oh god, I could sing about this film for ages. I could give its praises forever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Tyler's bullshit comes and goes. And like, I don't know if you'll count this as a course. When Margot is out of the room, they passive aggressively serve a birthday cake to one of the finance bros.
You told them it was my birthday. That seemed funny about 3 hours ago.
Yeah, exactly. And like all the chefs are totally committed to singing happy birthday to him, and it's just like
they know full well.
Well, I like it how they told him it was the birthday. So he told them it was a birthday like 3 hours ago, and they went to all the trouble to make a perfect birthday cake just to snidely rub it in his face.
I've heard it criticized that these chefs are all like singularly devoted to Slowick. Like he managed to get all these people to essentially commit themselves to die for this cause. What's your take on that?
I think that's an enormously uncharitable reading of the film. I mean, for a start, like even just within, like, forget like the meta, right? And just talk about the film as it's presented, as the world as it's presented by the film, right? We are shown explicitly how cultish this group of chefs are. They live on a remote island, utterly dedicated to their craft. They live in a barracks where there isn't even like, a wall between the toilet and everybody else, regardless of gender. They get up at 5. They go to bed at 1 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Like. These people are systematically worked into an utter cultish devotion. Like, essentially, right, if you're going to criticize, like, oh, how did he get all these chefs to kill themselves? I'm like, okay, well, how did the Jonestown massacre happen? How did, any cult suicide happen? Like, it's cult behavior. These people are utterly dedicated. We're shown that repeatedly.
Mm-hmm. They fucking live on a remote island. They have no contact with the rest of the world for months at a time. Slowick apparently doesn't even go, like, have a day off to do anything for 4 months. Like at a time, like I don't know, when you're cut off from people that could maybe talk you down from such drastic measures as this.
And you're literally living in a cult, and all of your sense of self-worth is devoted on the satisfaction of people who are never going to be satisfied, and that's been like demonstrably proved to you that your life is meaningless now. Mm-hmm. Like, again, it's worth pointing out, Slowick's not the one who said they should all kill themselves. It was one of his sous chefs.
Yeah,
they all think like this, and the degree to which Slowick is like a mastermind is genuinely left up in the air by the film, right? Deliberately. Because that's part of the thing of like, you assume it's him and the guests assume it's him because we have this idea that like one man, singular obsessive vision is what makes good art. And that's part of what the film is tearing down. It's like, no, art's a collaborative process. And like, Catherine was a big part of it, and Jeremy was a big part of it, and Sommelier seems to be a big part. Like, all of the staff are in on this. This is a group plan. It's not just his.
Mm-hmm. And Elsa is a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so right before this scene with the hanging, we kind of just had to skip over it for the sake of showing it. But yeah, so basically the way I interpreted this, because Jolly wasn't sure, was he's telling her to go get a barrel of dessert for what, like pudding, I think.
Yeah, it's the chocolate sauce. He wants to get the chocolate sauce. He's
telling her that she forgot it. This is Elsa, by the way, for any of you guys who don't know. And that because she's negligent, I think is the word he used. And so now it's up to her to go get it. In reality, I don't think the plan was to serve this particular dish, but he wanted to give her a job because he wanted her to be on their side. And then he said that it was because she forgot it, but in reality, he just didn't tell her that they would need it. And that's playing into her like insecurities that she's now being replaced by her as basically the next in command, the right-hand chef, because she's so utterly devoted to him and making sure that she gets his vision exactly right. To the point where she tries to kill Margot when Margot's searching through Slowick's house. Once she leaves to go get the sauce, the barrel. But yeah, that's basically what this scene is. And then she sees Tyler hanging. Yeah.
I think with Elsa and the interpretation of the dishes, right? Like, I think it works either way. Because if this was meticulously planned and Slowick just deliberately didn't tell Elsa, I guess the original plan was to basically rub her obsession in her own face, like in the way that Jeremy had it done as well. And like, cause her to have a breakdown. It's like, I think he folded Margot into, like, he could have either folded Margot into an existing plan or modified the plan to accommodate for Margot. But either way, it works, right? Thematically, with what he's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important thing, is whether or not it thematically works.
Yeah.
Side note, I really like Tyler's shoes.
Well, he's not going to use them if you want to just tear them off of his corpse real quick.
No, they're all burned, man. Like, the restaurant's gone. I don't know if you heard. Like, I tried to get a reservation, but like, apparently they're not going to be taking anyone for a good long while.
Damn. Probably something to do with COVID.
Yeah, fucking COVID. But yeah, so she disappears into the into Slowick's rooms, and we've discussed like the thematic like importance of the rooms and what they represent and the silver door and all that. So we don't need to rehash that. I will repeat, because we mentioned it earlier, though. This is the one moment where I was unhappy with the film in any way.
Oh, because of
the knife, yeah.
Yeah, let me back it up just a bit.
So Margot, because again, like, Slowick's house is a direct recreation of the restaurant, so there are always like sharp knives and shit everywhere. Mm-hmm. But Margot just puts it down when she goes through the silver door. She puts it down on a table, and Elsa picks it up. And I'm like, come on, you would not let go of that knife in this situation.
Yeah. There it is. She set it down on a table instead of just keeping it with her for some reason.
It's one moment of the idiot ball.
Mm-hmm. Like we said, no film is perfect. This is a genuine problem.
Yeah, it's a flaw. It also, I guess, what bugs me, right? Because it bugs me and it gratifies me in some way. Because like, it's not a flaw that is super plot integral, because she's still in a room full of fucking sharp knives, which she does make use of later.
Yeah, they still fight, and she still ends up killing Elsa. The only consequence to this is that she gets slashed in the arm.
Yeah, it is just one of those things though, where like, it was done to create a dramatic moment where I'm like, you could have just had Elsa walk into the kitchen and grab a knife without having to have that's the Paco jet, without having to have Margot grab the idiot ball for a second. One moment of a little bit of laziness, or just not thinking it through. It's a bit of a shame, but it again doesn't really affect the plot. Doesn't really affect anything. It's just a minor nitpick.
I mean, if I were rewriting this scene, like, it's such an easy fix, because like, surely Elsa would have a knife, or at least be able to access a knife easily. And if I were betting on these two people in terms of like who'd win in a knife fight, I'd probably say her. She's a fucking chef. She's been training for this exact purpose. Like she knew good and well that like a lot of the guests might end up trying to fight back, and that she have to help.
I don't know if Elsa. I don't know if Elsa is a chef. I think Elsa might just be the maitre d', because like the wait in a professional restaurant, the wait staff and the cooking staff are usually separated. Like they're usually two distinct groups.
True.
And like she seems to be the maitre d' rather than the anything to do with the kitchen. That being said, like she still has access to lots of knives. She could have just picked one up from the kitchen on her way out. If Elsa had turned up holding a knife, I wouldn't have been like, where did she get that from?
It actually disappeared out of the Praetorian Guard's hand and like reappeared in her hand. So,
oh god, yeah, I had. I don't know if you saw on Twitter. I had more people being like, "Rey is a well-written character." Like, no, sorry, I'm really sorry. No, she isn't.
I just ignore them at this point because there's no reason.
I know. I should. I also got into a fight with Sargon of Akkad earlier, but that was another matter.
Oh, you got into a fight with Sargon? Why?
Well, it's without going on too much of a tangent. People were Elon Musk and Joe Rogan were having a go at a medical health professional who's dedicated his life to like making patent-free vaccines for people. They were being like all anti-vax conspiratorial and having a go at him. And then good old Carl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad got involved because that man has an opinion worth fucking listening to. And like posted something really like foul about him. I was like, no, fuck you, man. I'm not having this. And so I retweeted him being like, you're an ignorant dick. Like, in more polite language, like you're an ignorant dick. It's basically what I said. And then he tried to lecture me on ethics, at which point I just reposted that time he said sex with children was okay. Because that's the thing he's actually said, and it's on the public record and reported in newspapers because the stupid fucker stood as a party candidate for a far right anti-immigrant group. Fuck that man. Fuck anyone who lets him on that channel or podcast. Yep. Just fuck that dude.
This is our daily dose of woke politics here. For all of my commenters to get mad about and fucking shit on us for.
The vaccines were good. Bite me. You should have gotten vaccinated if you didn't. Bite me.
Every live stream gets one. Tell him, Peter.
Apparently every stream gets one.
Okay.
Yes, back to the wokeness of a white person killing, or the anti-wokeness of a white person killing a woman of color.
She did.
Yeah, Elsa's last line is, he didn't tell me, I didn't forget, I didn't make a mistake, basically. And I believe her. She seems like she's the kind of person who would remember. Yeah.
Oh, she absolutely would have brought that barrel if he told her to bring the barrel. She would not have forgotten it.
Yeah. So that's a deliberate manipulation by Slowick, I think. I don't think he intended for her to get killed, though. I don't think that was. I
don't know that he expected Elsa to like chase after Margot and try to kill her. Like he's
I don't think
preoccupied with something else, and she just slipped out.
Yeah. Anyway, we come back. Margot brings the barrel back to the restaurant. She kicks it in through the door, looking all haggard. Oh, well, yeah. First of all, she goes and she sees. At Tantalus on the bleeding, a chef on the bleeding edge, also a chef on the bleeding edge, as another pun. Fucking hilarious. Yeah, this guy is very much on the edge.
When you arrive at Tantalus, I can't fucking read that. A gleaming new
temple to tasting menu modernism in Murray Hill from Chef Julian Slurk. A small card greets you at your table. On this card is a single word: savor.
Which is a reference. We didn't mention this at the beginning. Like when he introduced the first course, he said to savor the food, not to eat it. Savor it.
Yeah. It's that sort of curated touch that might ordinarily portend an evening of grim pretension, says this critic. But there is nothing ordinary about Tantalus. Over 4 devilishly challenging hours and as many as 20 courses, Slurk and his army of... Again, even here they're referred to like as an army of lieutenants, right? Don't so much pummel the senses as bewilder them into a new understanding. And I can't read the rest because it's not on screen.
Yeah.
Even in the Tantalus, he looks upset. There's the photo of his wife and child.
There's
the angel and Doug Barrick, the angel investor. Yeah, looks unhappy in every photo. And then there's
this one at Hamburger Howie's,
framed.
Now you guys know
put on a special table.
Now you guys know why I'm wearing this particular apron in my profile.
Oh yeah, fuck me! I had not remembered that. What a nice detail.
I was like, it's got to be this one, right? Because Slowick.
Yeah, hamburger of the month, employee of the month, Julian Slowick.
He looks so happy.
He looks positively fucking thrilled.
He's so excited to be here. Yeah.
Oh,
It's
and
not
she
exactly subtle, but it's like, yeah, she's realizing that um the passion and the joy that he used to get out of this is just gone now because he's been serving these wretched, awful
awful people. Yeah,
people for decades, and they've given no engagement to the thing that he cares about. And
yeah.
that's why this is happening.
Oh man, yeah. She sees the burger.
It's a
Big
cheeseburger.
big close up of that burger.
Tony used to eat cheeseburgers.
Yeah, that's why we sent Baby Stark to this restaurant.
And she gets back, and he
Uh,
confronts her for is this before or
well, this is like when he's like, you're a taker, and you're gonna die with the takers.
yeah.
And because he's written her off, right? He's like, you're one of them. You're not one of us.
Let me find this part in the script. Because, like, what he says right here in this scene, I don't want to play it because it's copyright, but what he says right here in this scene is pretty good.
Oh, it's because she used the radio, isn't it? That's what happened. She used the radio
Yeah,
that she
used
found
the
in his house.
radio to try and save them. Which
She tried to call for help.
yeah. And then there he is,
Yeah,
the guy.
that's the Coast Guard guy
Help us.
who was there. He is there earlier in the movie. He's by the door earlier in the film as one of the staff. Yeah, and they did this big pretense where they raise the hopes of the guests and then crush them again.
Yep.
And Slowick has written off Ernest Taylor Joy. Yeah. Oh man. Can you imagine how annoyed you'd be if you were the guests and you saw that? You're like, oh, fucking hell.
What the fuck?
You're like, come on. But you know, if they'd been paying attention, they would have known.
Mm-hmm. It is worth mentioning that like even Margot didn't notice that he was one of the staff members. So like we credit her for paying attention and actually engaging because she's the only one who's trying. But even these little details do slip over, like slip past her to go over her head.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like she's not paying her full attention until Jeremy dies. So at that point, she's more just like trying to get through the evening.
Yeah. Well, so I relate to her the most because like I just don't get it. Jolly's a foodie, but I'm over here like, yeah, I don't really see the appeal to any of this.
Well, I mean, I'm a foodie, but I'm still very much in the corner of like, for example, I'm a huge fan of street food. I think street food is real cooking. I don't like. This is gonna sound odd for a French person. I really don't like extremely pretentious haute cuisine. There's a scene in Good Omens which kind of takes the piss out of this, where like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, one of them is famine, and famine's stick is that like he has like created a chain of fancy restaurants where they serve haute cuisine because it's basically the rich starving themselves by eating fuck all. So I'm very much on like, no, food should be artistically merited. Like food should have artistic merit at that level, but it's primarily there to be delicious, right? And if being delicious is an integral part of the art, then what the fuck why are you doing it with cooking? Do it with something else.
Well, but how can like the taste of the food be anything but subjective?
Well, how can any art be anything but subjective? Sorry, give me a second.
Can you use abandoned us?
No, sorry. I just need to. I have food in the oven. And I've just been told it's ready, so I might have to jump out for 5 minutes to grab it and then come back. If that's okay.
That's fine. It better be a cheeseburger.
It's not. I'm afraid it's a peri peri chicken.
Peri peri chicken. I don't know. That sounds a bit fancy for my liking.
Nah, it's a classic Portuguese spiced chicken breast, basically, with a little bit of rice. But I will be back in just a few minutes.
All right. I will keep chat occupied until then. What are we up to, guys? I know this is not exactly an orthodox stream, and I don't have nearly as many views as we typically get on streams because I understand this is not exactly a popular movie. But for all of you guys that are here with me right now, I appreciate you. Do you have any questions, comments, concerns? Fine, okay. To be fair, I haven't seen all of the Batman movies, and some of the ones that I have seen, it's been years. So, the Batman is number one, like easily. Like it's like a 9 out of 10. Um, After that, I guess I'd probably give it to. Well, again, like I haven't actually seen a lot of these movies, so like I can't say that the Keaton films are better or worse than the Nolan films, because even though I have seen the Keaton films, that was years ago. I don't remember them. I do like the Nolan films, even though they're not exactly great, and I do mean that, including The Dark Knight. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, I'm the wrong guy to give you a ranking of the Batman films, because I don't really care about him, like, cinematically. I don't go out of my way to watch Batman movies. I have seen Mask of the Phantasm. Thought it was all right. I thought it kind of veered at the end. Like they just kind of just decided to make the Joker the main villain for some reason. I don't really know what the point was of that. Yeah, Mask of the Phantasm is fine. Although, having not seen the animated series, a lot of probably the nostalgia was lost on me. So again, it's just not really my thing. It's just not like I'm not the guy to ask about this sort of thing. I do apologize if that's not the answer you were hoping for. Favorite part of Kenobi? I suppose I liked it when it. Well, there was that one scene where because then Obi-Wan said to Leia the thing about I liked there were a few little moments that I will admit are good, like when you sort of just take them as is, like just little lines, like I said in my videos, like when Riva says, "You really love the boy like he's your own," and Owen says, "He is my own." Like it's a neat little moment. And in the same vein, like when Bale tells Leia that she is an Organa in every way that matters, like yeah, good moment. They both represent the same theme ultimately, is that like, you know, we're not family by blood in any semblance of the term, but like we are family and we love you and you're my child. It's just they're just good scenes. The scene where Obi-Wan like tells Leia about like what it's like to feel the Force, where it's like being afraid of the dark and then you turn on a light, and that's sort of what it's like to have the Force. That's nice. It's good. These are all very small, ultimately superficial moments, but like, I don't know, I like them. Oh, jolly.
I have returned.
Oh, thank God, because I just ran out of things to say.
Well, what were you talking about before I came back?
I was just answering some questions. I did rank the few Batman movies that I've seen, though I didn't do very well because like most of the ones that I have seen, I don't really remember. And then I started talking about Kenobi. So as you can tell, that's something I wanted to avoid at all costs.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. But also, The Batman is the best Batman movie of all time.
Yes. That was
The Dark Knight Rises.
That was the only one that I like firmly was like, all right, yeah, the Batman is the best, but like the rest, like you could really convince me otherwise, because I haven't even seen most of them. The ones that I have seen, I barely remember, and also I don't think The Dark Knight is good.
I think The Dark Knight's fine. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's great. I think it's pretty bang average.
I don't think it's terrible. I just do not think it's good.
Yeah, it's not the masterpiece everyone seems to think it is.
But anyway, the menu. What next did you want to talk about? Because I think we've gone over every course except the cheeseburger and the s'mores.
I think we're nearly through it, right? So it's the cheeseburger is the next one, and oh my God, this cheeseburger!
Which we already did talk about this and like what it means and what happens essentially, but we can go over it again.
Well, just very simply, she's like she realizes how to get out of the situation because she's been paying attention. She's engaged with the art, with old Margot, and so she's like, "I would like a cheeseburger," and he's like, "A cheeseburger," and she's like, "Yes, a cheeseburger, a burger with cheese," and he's like,
the cheeseburger man, the cheeseburger man, the cheeseburger man.
Well, I was just thinking, have you seen like Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit?
Yeah.
You know, like a bullet, like a burger. What kind of burger? A burger of solid cheese. But yeah, she gets the cheeseburger, and we see this loving montage, which is like the best I think that food has ever looked in anything ever. It's unbelievably like fucking beautiful to look at, but just like so. It's such a stark contrast, right? And we were saying this earlier, like all the rest of the food is like very artistically pretty, but very unappealing. It's very like dispassionate and detached from being food. This is not. This is the reverse. This is like, no, the fact that this is food, like this is not food that happens to be beautiful. This is beautiful because it is so clearly good food.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, and in that it is carrying the theme of the joy of cooking that Julian is bemoaning the loss of, and which Anya has worked out is what she needs to appeal to in order to find a way within this art, whilst keeping it coherent, that she can have an out. And it is also just simply a delicious fucking cheeseburger. And he smiles. He smiles for the only time in the movie.
He's so happy.
he's so bloody happy that he gets to do one last bit of cooking that he likes before he dies. My God, look at that thing.
So delicious. I don't even like
sesame
seed buns, and I would eat the fuck out of that.
Oh, I love sesame seed buns. I will say that I'm not a big fan of onion in burgers. That's just my thing.
Really? I really like onion in burgers.
Well, it's weird because I love onion in almost everything else. Like onion is one of like my go-to ingredients if I'm cooking a meal. But in a burger, I don't know. Like I just want to. It's the meat and the cheese and the bun and maybe some bacon. Like I want it to be like a pure, like grimy, like slightly grimy, delicious experience.
So you just eat them. You just eat them like plain meat and cheese only, because that's typically what I do as well. But sometimes, every once in a while, I'm like, I could put some grilled onions on here.
Yeah, except I'm with bacon rather than grilled onions. Or like, actually, even with onions, I'm largely okay. It's like gherkin. Gherkin can fuck off. I don't know who thought gherkin was a good idea. It's not. It's like the people who put fucking pineapple on pizza. You know who you are, and you should be ashamed. and I will have my vengeance in this world or the next.
Pineapple does not belong on pizza. I got like unironically so much flack for saying that on Twitter, and I was just joshing. I wasn't even being serious.
They hated him because he spoke the truth.
I mean, it is true. Pineapple doesn't belong on pizza, but like that was so not a serious tweet, and I got so much shit for it.
I just want to have someone like almost like a Stoic like rant, like, well, if pineapple can go on pizza, then fucking anything. I guess anything goes on a pizza. Why not have a shoe? Put a shoe on a pizza. It's just a free for all. There are no rules. Yeah, she gives that thing a good old munch, and it is delicious. And he's happy. He's so happy. She's enjoyed it. And then she's like, I want it to go. And like the thing is, I like this the subtle bit of acting here, because like this is not like she has tricked him. She has found a way to artistically appeal to him to give her an out, and he wanted to give her that. So he's the happiness is like on multiple levels, right? He's happy someone's actually engaged with his art, someone actually enjoys his cooking, and that someone has actually like figured out who he is as a person, what this has all been for, and found a way to give him thematically a way of saving the kind of audience he values from this debacle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all conveyed with just like the smallest of honestly, man, the films that get nominated for Oscars, or the performances that get nominated for Oscars, and like then you see a thing like this, and I'm like, I know this film is going to get no attention, even though it should. But I know it's not going to be mentioned by critics, even though it should. But if I was running the Oscars and this performance wasn't nominated, at the very least nominated, I would throw a fucking fit.
I would fucking I would fucking slap Chris Rock.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like this is not Chadwick Boseman's fault, right? But like, you remember when Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar over Chadwick Boseman after he died? And like the everyone, like the audience, the academy, like the entire fucking event had been set up because they were like, oh, Chadwick's gonna win it because we think he should win it because he did that movie we liked and we liked him as a person. And that no one actually bothered to think about whether his performance was actually the best one. And then Anthony Hopkins won for The Father, which, like, yeah, damn straight. That's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen any actor do. And take nothing away from Chadwick Boseman, who was a phenomenal actor, but like, it's almost like the Heath Ledger winning for the Joker thing, right? Of like, he wasn't the best performance that year, and so winning it would have, if anything, been a slightly grimy thing to give to Chadwick Boseman. Like, we'd all have known why he won it.
Yeah. It feels insensitive to say that, but it's like, I don't know that it's right to give him that if he didn't actually earn it.
Well, give him a Lifetime Achievement Award or something. Like, there are other awards you can give, right, without denigrating the integrity of what the award is supposed to be for. Give him a special in memorandum. Give his family like a special, once-off prize or something. But yeah, if he'd beaten out Anthony Hopkins, I think I'd have justifiably been quite annoyed.
Yeah. Now, as somebody who doesn't value the Oscars at all because I think they're worthless and I think they're almost always wrong, that doesn't matter to me one way or the other. If this film doesn't get nominated for Oscars, like, okay, it's still great. It's still one of the best movies of 2022, if not the best. I can't think of a movie that came out in 2022 that was better, at least that I've seen.
I know. And the thing is, like, there's some fierce competition from 2022. You've got Banshees of Inisherin, and you've got like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mm-hmm.
There are some really good films that came out in 2022, and I think this beats them. Like, not it's marginally in some cases, but it does win, and it's really, it deserves a lot more applause than it got.
Yeah,
it went unappreciated.
I was surprised at how much appreciation Everything Everywhere got, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was a pretty indie film, but it became pretty popular. Yeah. It became pretty acclaimed. Like, pretty much everyone talks about that movie. This one kind of flew under the radar, and that sucks.
Yeah. In an ideal world, this would have replaced The Woman King in the nominee categories, but yeah.
I haven't seen that. Is The Woman King any good?
It's fine. Like, to be fair to it, it's not a bad movie. It's perfectly fine. It's got a lot of undeserved praise for being a film about the subject matter it was about. Even though I will say, as someone who's interested in history, the history is not well represented at all. That tribe actually was integral in selling other black people to white slavers. But we're not going to talk about that. And just as a film on its own merits, it's perfectly good. Like, it's a good movie. It's a solid 7.5 out of 10. But it's not a 9. It's not The Menu. It's not Banshees of Inisherin. It's not Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
It's not Parasite. Like, these are movies that genuinely deserve to be held up. Like, and you were like, oh, the Oscars don't matter to me because they're worthless. And I'm like, I agree with you. And the Oscars are worthless to me. But part of what angers me is, like, they shouldn't be. The Oscars should not be worthless. It annoys me. It annoys me that they are.
It's the same with the Emmys. Like, they've never nominated Better Call Saul. And I'm like, come on, man. Better Call Saul?
Yeah.
Nothing but stellar performances across the board from every single actor.
But we needed to give it to Kenobi.
I
love how Disney.
I swear to God,
so
if Kenobi gets even nominated for an Emmy, I'm going to be pissed.
I just love it how Disney put the entirety of Kenobi up for every Emmy category. And I'm like, that is so bloody optimistic. Like, I almost want to applaud your naivety, like the sheer optimism, the wild optimism of that move. It was like, what was the game? Like, they had this for like the VGAs, right? Where, like, there was a game that was nominated. And I'm like, that is so spectacularly optimistic. Like, I almost want to applaud your balls for even thinking that you were worthy of being merited in this way.
Well, I remember last year, Book of Boba Fett was being nominated for like best visual effects or something, and I was like, really?
Oh, no, that was it. Thor Ragnarok. Not Ragnarok, right? Thor: Love and Thunder was nominated for like a VFX, but like Disney put it up for consideration for the best VFX, and I was like, that's almost endearing.
I respect your grit. I respect your gumption. Come on.
Yeah. Like, it's almost sweet how bloody blind you are, how ignorant you are.
You want to pat them on the head, right? Like, you want to just give them a lollipop or something.
It's the same reaction I have when people tell me that they like the finale of She-Hulk. Or I'm like, oh, just Yeah, that's sweet. Go into the corner. I'll get you some crayons and a lollipop, and I'll leave you to have a good time. I don't want to ruin this for you, but yeah.
We're coming off like condescending pricks right now, and it's fine because we kind of
Well, again, I know this film is like very anti-snobbishness, but it's anti-snobbishness in a particular direction, right? Of like, I don't think it's snobby to point out when art falls flat, right? As long as you're doing it with like from a place of good faith and you're trying to be empathetic and like you're trying to meet the art on its own terms and you're not trying to impose like an arbitrary standard on it, which I don't think we do, right? You and I think we've been very clear about how we standardize art and what we expect from art. And we've also been very open that we're happy to have that challenge, that standard rather, to be challenged if someone has a coherent argument.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm not happy to have, and I'm happy for people to enjoy things as well. Like I am not going to ever tell people like this. We did this with Joe, right? I'm never going to be the one to be like, "You liked Book of Boba Fett? Well, you're a fucking terrible person and part of the problem." Like that's not my view. My view is it upsets me that shows like this have become the norm because they're so clearly taking advantage of the goodwill of people who just want to have a good time.
Well, like to that same end, I've had people criticize my Kenobi videos for saying you are not allowed to like Kenobi, when in reality, and part of me was like, did I say that? That doesn't sound like something I'd say. I rewatched my Kenobi video recently, and what I actually said, this was part 2, I should say. I didn't rewatch part 1, but what I actually said was, it's fine if you like this, but whenever I lay out this criticism, don't simply defend it by saying it doesn't matter or like it's fine, but like it doesn't bother me and like I like it. And especially don't like bend over backwards and do mental gymnastics to try to infer this, that, or the other in order to defend this. You could simply just say, that's fine. It's not a big deal. I recognize it as a problem. And apparently even just saying that in my Kenobi video was too much. It was too condescending or mean or whatever.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll go the other way, right? And so, like, if someone's like, "Oh, the menu," I didn't like the menu. I found it really boring. It's just, it bored me silly. I couldn't watch it. It was shit. Which, like, this is not what Southpaw said. But Southpaw watched the movie and he was like, "This didn't do it for me. Like, I didn't really like it very much."
Really?
And I was like, "Yes, burn him, burn the witch." No, I was like, "That's fine. Like, if you don't like it, you don't like it, right? As long as like." You're recognizing that that's an utterly subjective preference, right? As long as you're not denigrating the craft of the work that was put in to make this film what it is. Because, like, we can do this for lots of things, right? Like, I really do not like, nut-flavored puddings. That doesn't mean that nut-flavored puddings are bad intrinsically. And if someone was like, "So do you think nut-flavored puddings are, like, shit?" I'd be like, "Well, they're probably really well crafted." Like, in terms of like for the people who like nut flavored things, these are going to be like perfectly calibrated and works of art for them. It's just not for me. That's fine. But if you serve me a smashed piece of shit on a plate and then tell me this is a well-made nut pudding, we're going to have words because it's clearly not.
I've been trying to get my friend into Better Call Saul because we watched Breaking Bad all the way through. He liked it. And it's been very slow going getting through Better Call Saul because he thinks it's boring, which to each their own. If you think Better Call Saul is boring and you don't want to watch it, fine. You're wrong objectively, but fine. But like one thing he does that really gets under my skin is like when a scene is happening that he's just not interested in, he'll just be on his phone. He'll just be scrolling through Twitter or whatever, not like paying attention. And like that grinds my gears regardless, because like as somebody who goes out of his way to try to give the thing I'm watching the fullest attention that I can, even when it's something as bad as Kenobi, it really annoys me when I'm trying to show somebody something that genuinely means a lot to me and I look over and they're just sitting on their phone, they're not paying attention.
Yeah, you should just try. I mean, again, like it's fine to recognize that something is boring you and then to pull out of it. So like if your friend had been like, "No, this is not doing it for me, this is wasting my time, really, I'd rather just call it a day," and then he went on his phone and did something else, right?
Yeah,
that's fine. But if you're telling someone you're giving them your full attention and you're just fucking not because you're just too apathetic to bother, you're just a dick. You're wasting their time at that point.
Yeah. Well, my time would have been wasted, but I at least got to watch Better Call Saul, so I wasn't really wasting my time.
I mean, like, yeah, but more on a principle thing, right? It's like, I don't know, like if I go to the Tate Modern in London, or if I go to the V&A and I look at like a work of art, like let's say I went, I don't know, let's say they're doing an exhibition of Damien Hirst's artwork. Now, I think Damien Hirst is a fucking hack. But like, if he put out a new exhibition and some friends of mine were like, "Oh, we're going to go. Do you want to come with me?" and I said yes, I wouldn't then like moan and whinge around the gallery or like try and drag their attention to other things instead. I would actually give Damon Hirst like the consideration of my time, and I'd probably come to the same conclusion that he is a hack. But at least I would have done like my due diligence, right? Having committed to give him that attention. Maybe this is like the ex-theatre producer actor in me talking, but like, there's nothing more infuriating as an actor or a producer than like standing on stage or being in the audience and looking out, but you're giving everything to make a night for these people, and someone's just like staring at the wall or like twiddling with their thumbs or just not fucking paying attention. It's so utterly insulting.
It's almost like that's on theme for this stream, isn't it? Not engaging properly with art.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like he could have bowed out and not watched Better Call Saul, but instead he sat there while it was playing, like scrolled through Instagram or Twitter and like didn't pay attention, and then like variously like would have the gall to ask me to explain what was going on because he didn't fully understand. And I'm like, you'd know if you just pay attention. Yeah,
like it's that's my big bugbear. And then the other big bugbear I have is when people like give you they make a claim about a film and then you ask them to back it up and they just refuse to. I'm like, well, okay. Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, man. Like, just why bring it up if that's how you're gonna be? Actually, again, like you kind of like chastised me, I think reasonably, for the Ray discussions again. Like, it's like almost like a drug addiction. Like, I'm sorry, Sheev, I relapsed and I did a Ray discussion. I'm sorry, man. And you're like, oh, Jolly, I'm so disappointed in you. It's back to rehab for you, friend. Yeah, if you could just give me $5 to talk to the Ray people. I was like, no, Jolly, no. But yeah, I was. This came up again because like I don't start these fights on Twitter. I'd like to be the one to point this out. What happens is like I will see bullshit come across my timeline, and it's not just someone being like, "I like this thing," can I let that go? That's just good for you guys. It's someone being like, "Oh, anyone who criticizes Ray is just a misogynist," or like anyone who thinks this is like, you know, they're holding a double standard, and it's just because she's a female character, or like they're not giving Star Wars a fair shake, or they don't understand this. I'm like, it's almost like, you know, Margot in this film, like, no, I fucking understand it. I understand that there's a theme is Tyler. I just think it's shit. I do get it. You don't have to patronize me. And if you're going to make that positive claim, if I then respond with like, what an interesting thought, please can you justify this or qualify this? You don't get to then turn around and bitch about it. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't.
Yep.
But
anyway,
I'm with Sloak. Let's kill them all.
Yeah, I want them all to burn. I'm like the Mad King, burn them all.
Well, yeah, what we don't know about the backstory for that is the Mad King had just watched the menu and was just really angry at the guests. Shame we just misinterpreted him.
Just as a side note, I've been rewatching early seasons Game of Thrones in my downtime, and man, what the fuck happened to this show, man?
The funniest thing, do you remember when there was that theory that like the reason the Mad King was saying burn them all was that Bran had time walked into his head, and so he was actually saying burn them all about the White Walkers, which would have been an interest. That was a fan theory that went around, and I was like, that would have been thematically quite interesting. But that's, you know, that the Mad King's madness was the result of Bran walking in to him from the future. Yeah. That the Mad King had just seen glimpses of the future and was gone being driven crazy. Didn't say where that like Hodor was. But
could have been cool, yeah.
I saw a really funny thing where someone was like talking about that theory, and someone was like, I have a new theory, which is that he foresaw the last 3 seasons of Game of Thrones. And I was just like, no, burn it all, burn them all.
Yeah, really
the Mad
bad.
King was a hero. We just couldn't see it. Right, but yeah, to round off the discussion on the menu, the last dish is the s'mores.
The s'mores.
I'm sorry, like they're not a thing in the UK. It's kind of like a Twinkie. I'm aware of its existence. I've occasionally even seen one on like the American aisle of Tesco's, but I've never had them other than like as a fleeting reference in Zombieland. I've never had a s'more. I've never had a Twinkie or a snowball.
Have you ever been camping, like in the wilderness anywhere?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's typically when you have them as a kid. Is like you're out camping, either with like a group, like a church group or something, or like with your parents or something. You'll make s'mores. You know, you pack the graham crackers and the chocolate and the marshmallows. Have you never roasted marshmallows over a fire?
Oh yeah, I've straight up roasted the marshmallows, and because I'm British and posh and pretentious, I've also roasted crumpets over an open fire.
Well, but it's essentially that, but also like, hey, get some chocolate, get some graham crackers, we'll make s'mores. They're good. I don't know what to tell you.
I was just thinking, like, so one of my friends, in fact, I'm going on their hen night in like a week's time. One of my friends, she has like a fire pit around her house, and like last summer we were having like the fucking most like, and she is so working class, it's unreal. So this is not me. This is me being pretentious and bringing it to her house. We had like pieces of like brie cheese on like toasting forks over this fucking fire, and like the most absolutely up itself like version of a cookout you've ever seen. We're like, oh yes, we could do marshmallows, but we have this brie and chorizo sausage, so let's do that instead.
Jolly, stop being rich, you fucking pretentious snob.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I come from a posh background, but I have no money of my own. I'm an impoverished ex-aristocrat. That's me.
Ah.
In fact, I'm none of these things. I'm actually a black imp in a chef's hat. Do you not see my icon?
Wait, are you telling me you're committing? Oh no.
Yeah, no. Like, you think I'm committing to a character, but actually, like in real life, I actually genuinely am a black imp from the depths of hell. That's why you've never seen my face, Sheev.
Damn.
Other than it's butt ugly, and I don't want to scar you for life.
You are the imp.
I am the imp. That is me.
Indeed, imp of the perverse, one might say.
Yes, I am a low-born little creature, spiteful little creature.
They're making the s'mores, and it's dressing the people in their little
hats,
little chocolate.
It kind of reminds me of you ever seen like a fez hat?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. I really wanted there to be like a little chocolate tassel or something, but like no.
Yeah. I like to think that these are real marshmallows and real chocolate. They are, right? Because the chocolate starts melting when they burn.
I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure it's really chocolate and really marshmallows. Also, because like I said earlier, they had an actual like 3 Michelin star chef doing all the food preparation for them. So I'd be amazed if it wasn't real.
I didn't notice her hair was wet, but I did notice that the eyeliner was coming undone.
Yeah.
I just assumed she'd been crying profusely. I didn't realize she was waterboarded.
No, there you go. It's the leftover from the scene where she was waterboarded that got cut out.
So he's basically presenting it. We went over the speech earlier about how he hates s'mores. Oh, one thing that was fun is like right here. He was talking earlier about how he has chef hands and that he can. Like he was holding his hand over a burning flame and talking about how it doesn't affect him. Then right here he does this, just grabs it.
God damn, man, that's gonna fuck me up.
Like wow, whoa, stop! He's just holding it, and he's just doing his little speech.
That's gonna be painful AF.
I really like Slowick. He's great.
Yeah, and like they do a little thing where they all say "Thank you, chef" when he burns them off. Mm-hmm. Even the guests.
Yeah, real chocolate. I like to think, like, just imagine like being one of those guests. You're like, can I just get up and run? Like, is anyone going to stop me at this point?
Yeah, at this last moment,
I would try. Honestly, like, what do I have to lose? Oh, I love that shot. Right there. Oh,
yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah.
So Margot is with her cheeseburger, and she's sitting on a boat, and she gets to watch it go up in flames.
Yep, burns it all.
Marshmallow, chocolate, graham cracker, customers, staff, restaurant.
Restaurants.
Quite the s'more.
That is quite the s'more. Less is s'more. Also, you could say they got their just desserts.
Ha! But
no, joking aside, I think that is genuinely the visual pun. Well, yeah. I'm drawing attention to something the film is doing deliberately. I'm not just being an ass.
Well, the film is being an ass for having it be this way.
Yeah, absolutely. Blame the film.
She pulls out her cheeseburger. She starts eating, and she
has a copy of the menu.
What do we got? Amuse boucher, compressed and pickled, whatever that says.
It's cucumber and grapefruit, I think.
And then she uses it as a napkin. Here we are.
Yeah, she's like, fuck this place.
And that concludes the film. It ends here.
Yeah, and my God, what a good film that was.
It's fucking great,
Like,
guys.
oh, it's so good. It's also like conceptually quite simple. Like, there's not a lot of plot to the movie, if that makes sense, right? Like, it's literally over the course of 4 hours, some people go to a restaurant and it turns into a bit of a nightmare. Like, that's basically it.
Yeah.
There's no convoluted escape plans, no like intricate little like dynamics in the kitchen or whatever, or competitions. Like, there's no purge like element. Like, it's not gratuitous, is what I'm getting at. Like, this film is very like, it knows what it wants to do, and it's being very methodical and deliberate in how it's doing it, and then delivering that with just such great flair.
Yeah.
This film is that burger. It's just a well-made, cohesive experience without pretentious frills, well delivered,
Whereas
delicious to
something
eat.
like Glass Onion, which this film has been compared to a lot, is more akin to Tyler's bullshit.
Yeah.
Undercooked plot, stupid characters, utter lack of cohesion.
Yeah, derivative visuals. Like, that's not a good film.
Absolutely deceptive usage of time.
Yeah, that fucking film. Oh god, even comparing this film to Glass Onion is like so profoundly insulting to the menu.
Of course, but like, it has to be done, right? Because
Oh no, absolutely.
People
Like,
love.
you didn't make Yeah, you didn't make the comparison. Somebody else did, and we have to address it. It's just how it goes. But like, what were they thinking? What were you doing?
Yeah.
Reevaluate your life, son. You want to go home and rethink your life.
Stand there in your wrongness and continue being wrong.
Oh, I'm not allowed to say that, Sheev. I'm not allowed to say that sentence anymore. It upsets some people.
Yeah.
Oh, illiterates,
Anyway.
go watch The West Wing.
That was the menu. Go watch it. If you want, you know what? Just to rattle off other like great things that like we don't get to ever really talk about. That we've already mentioned, like Westworld. Fucking watch
Westworld.
Stop at season 2. There's no point in continuing further than that.
Season 1 is phenomenal. Like, the best series of television I've ever seen, by like hands down. Season 2 is good, but it's not nearly up to the standard of season 1.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a 7 or an 8 out of 10, probably a 7 out of 10. Whereas the first one was like a 10, but it's still worth watching.
Masterpiece. I would say that's Severance season 1. You haven't seen Severance, right, Jolly?
I haven't. No, I still need to get around to it. It's like Puss in Boots. I still haven't seen that either.
That too. Okay, you know what, Jolly? Watch Severance.
What?
If you like it enough, I will rewatch it and take notes. Maybe we could do a stream on it.
Ooh, I challenge accepted. I will rewatch it. It's on Apple, right? Apple Plus.
Yeah.
I might have to, for legal reasons, I can't say the term, but I might have to surreptitiously lay my hands on a copy under the table somehow.
Indeed, I can help you with that. Don't worry.
I'm just trying to think what else to recommend in terms of like, cause it's nice to do. It's so nice because we're gonna, we're gonna get sucked into doing a Ahsoka at some point.
Oh God, yeah. Well, I mean, there are other things like I talked about. Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Just another movie that I saw the trailer and I was like, that looks like shit. I'm not gonna watch it, and then I didn't for like a year.
Across the Spider-Verse.
Go watch that. You haven't seen that yet?
I have now.
Oh, you have? Okay.
I have,
talk
yes.
to you about it at some point soon.
Absolutely. I'm probably not tonight because I need to at some point get on with some work, but I'm free most of this week.
Well, so just a general overview. Like, what did you think of it?
I really liked it. It's really good. It's got problems. It's got a few problems.
It's got its problems. I'm still mulling over a bigger one that I have that might affect the overall score significantly.
Yeah,
we could talk about that.
I'll be interested to hear that. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else. Like, just recently that that's been really good that I've liked. There's so little. I mean, again, for those who haven't seen Bly Manor, go watch Bly Manor.
Yeah.
Oh
well, I recommend anything Mike Flanagan, even if it ends badly, like Midnight Mass, because like the first 5 episodes are genuinely so good that they're worth it, even though the last 2 kind of ruin it.
So that's the same for Hill House, right? Like, the first 9 episodes are excellent, and then 10 kind of ruins it. But
yeah, just guys, stop limiting yourself to Star Wars and Marvel and DC if that's all you guys are watching. I promise there's good shit out there still. You just have to know where to look. If
someone tells you that cinema is dead, they're wrong. Because this is, I guess this is the takeaway, right, of this particular subsection of what we're talking about. As much as we bitch about, and I think reasonably bitch about, like the general state of mass media production, like production companies and Disney and Amazon, like Rings of Power and all, and Mandalorian and all that shite that's just spewed out of the sludge pipe and onto our tables.
Lord of the Ring Gollum. No, sorry,
Lord
of the Ring Gollum.
Lord of Ring Gollum. As bad as these things are,
like instinctively putting the in there, even though it's not.
Yeah, I think Mauler said something similar, right? When he was talking about it on stream, he was like, "Oh yeah, you should naturally do that because your brain is trying to like correct it." But like, as bad as general media has become, and as annoying as it is that like the general state of media is in this state, there are diamonds in the rough. There are good things to be found. You're just going to have to look a little more carefully. Like previously, they were delivered to you. Now you're going to have to go looking for them. I'm afraid, but they do still exist. And the more you go looking for them, the more they will become the main again, because the bigger their audiences will be.
Well, I'd even like to think like the menu is an example of like there are people out there who are passionate about filmmaking and about storytelling, who genuinely want to do something great, and they see the state of like the media landscape, and their films are sort of a reaction to that. So what I'm getting at is like they recognize the sort of state that modern day blockbusters are in, and they're unhappy with it, and so it's incentivizing them to actually make something worthwhile, even more so than they might already have.
Yeah, because they're crying out for an audience, right? They're like, we are here. We do want to make good art. We need the culture to change, and the only way the culture changes, unfortunately, given how the world is run, is if the money, the flow of the money changes. So the more patronage these guys get, the more studios are going to be willing to greenlight projects like this. So if you want art to improve, you need to go looking for products to buy.
Which is why we're trying to give it as much coverage as we can. Put our little 2 cents in the hat. This stream did not get nearly as many views as like Armando streams would, and I didn't expect it to. But like, again, any of you who like sat here and watched this and are willing to give this film a chance if you haven't already seen it, thank you. Seriously, if even one person was convinced today to go watch the menu and then they go watch the menu and they enjoy it, like, great.
Yeah, I mean, unironically, I would rather we did a stream that convinced 10 people to watch the menu than we did a stream that convinced 1,000 people not to watch The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Although I think you should also not watch The Mandalorian.
Not good for you.
Yeah,
not good
save
for your health.
yourself. Yeah, as we can attest, it's not good for your mental health. I've killed 3 people already this week in blind rage. I think Sheev was like,
I've done 6 different menus since watching The Mandalorian season 3. Different islands that I rent.
Just slightly jokey comparison. I was thinking about this the other day. Do you think the menu is basically like the cooking equivalent of the Saw movies? But like the first Saw movie, isn't the whole thing is like he's doing this because he thinks people don't appreciate what it means to be alive?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Slowick is just if Jigsaw had become a chef, he would have got the menu.
Well, in the same sense, like he also a lot of the times, like the traps that he sets, he gives easier ways to get out than like, instead of cutting off your leg, you could do it this way. And like you wouldn't have to sacrifice anything if only you were to pay attention, if only you were to like engage, I guess, with the trap meaningfully.
Oh yeah, like when they kick the key down the drain by accident.
Yeah.
Idiots.
But anyway, yeah.
I guess it's
menu's awesome.
Time to wrap up.
I did enjoy doing this stream.
Oh god, yeah.
A bit shorter than typical, but I mean, only so much to say, unless we were to get into like all of the nitty gritty. And like I already said, I don't really feel like being here for 12 hours.
Also, you say that, but like we've done nearly 4 hours on a fairly short movie. Like compared to like what we spent 4 hours, like an equivalent now, like 4 hours on 4 episodes of The Mandalorian. And there's a lot to talk about with how bad each one of those is. So we've given this film a fair amount of space to breathe.
Yeah. Well, I think
thank you all.
There is like that aspect that's like, if it's bad, especially as bad as like the shows that we've broken down, like there's going to be multiple layers in like each scene to why it's bad, and like so that just takes a long time to break down in each scene. Whereas this is like, this is good because this is the theme and these are the characters and this is how they represent that theme, and it's just like really good stuff.
Oh, actually, just before we wrap up, there is a kind of almost like a meta criticism of this film that I want us to address, which is and I think this is what EFAP kind of said when they briefly talked about it, was they were like, this film is kind of worthless even if it's an okay film, because the actual interesting thing to discuss is the themes it's trying to talk about, not not the film itself.
Yeah.
Which I fucking hate as a criticism. For two reasons. One, you can make that criticism of any art piece. You can be like, oh, well, Lord of the Rings isn't actually that interesting. What's actually interesting is talking about how people can band together to fight tyranny. And I'm like, no, it matters how it's conveyed, right? Like, it's not... Art's job isn't just to convey information, it's to convey it compellingly. Like, it's to convince you of it, right? It's not just trying to tell you the state of affairs, it's trying to make you think that way too. And so a film like The Menu, it's not just being like, oh, our theme is that art is in a bad place. It's, here is a character-driven and compelling plot that allows you to engage artistically with an artist's frustration about the state of art. You wouldn't be nearly as interested in talking about this theme if you not watched the movie.
Well, yeah, because we can talk about the themes that are presented in this movie in a vacuum by themselves, but like just be having a conversation about the theme, we wouldn't have anything to like sort of bounce off of, which I think makes it a lot more dynamic.
Well, yeah, there's a reason why, like in philosophy, we use like thought experiments to explain like things. Yeah. Because if I just told you, like, oh, the ethical dilemma of utilitarianism is like choosing between two sets of goods, you're like, okay, what the fuck does that mean? Why should I care? I'm like, okay, well, imagine
in the form of the trolley problem. Then I'm like, okay, I have a visual now that I can use.
Like, imagine you have Kenobi on one track and the Mandalorian on another, and you're like, is there any way I can put them on the same track, John?
Can I just derail this, like, or can I just stop the trolley?
Like, no, like you flick the switch and you pick one and it crushes the Mandalorian. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know you'd go for that option. That's kind of interesting. And then, like, as I speak, you just stone-faced walk across to where Kenobi is still tied to the tracks and just beat it to death with your bare hands. I'm like, oh, you gave Mando the merciful death. Wow, you've really flipped this train problem on its head.
I love the memes that are like, yeah, I mean, if you drift, you could probably get both tracks.
Yeah, literally. It is that thing. But yeah, like, joking about Kenobi aside, like, this is the thing, right? Like, when people complain to me that a film like the Menu is too abstract, that what's actually interesting is the ideas and not the film, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, to be as blunt as possible. Like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I really am. Maybe this just wasn't the right kind of example for you, and that's fine. But don't sit there and pretend to me that you would have talked about the themes in a vacuum without using a comparison of your own or stories of your own. Because that's how we think as people. We're fundamentally an empathetic social species. We look for patterns of relation. I mean, hell, that's what art is. It's relational reasoning. So, yeah, that criticism, jog on. I don't know what else to say.
And on that note, thank you guys so very much for watching.
Yes.
We will see you eventually when we cover something bad, I'm sure.
So much for joining us on what has been actually a super enjoyable stream. And as always, Sheev, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be doing this with you.
Yeah, always a pleasure to have you on and to just bounce weird concepts off of you, because you'll just eat them up and then spit them back at me.
I am a strange rubbery creature that eats concepts. That's what I am.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Love you. Woo!